We'll call the meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. This is the regular meeting of the Architectural Board of Review, Village of Lake Bluff, for April 2nd. Roll call, please, Mike.
Member Cottrell.
Present.
Member Dahlman.
Present.
Member Kerouac.
Here.
Member Stratoff.
Here.
Member Wicks.
Present.
And Chair Hunter.
Here.
And Member Deegan is absent.
Okay, the consideration of the March 5th minutes. Anybody have any comments, corrections?
I move to approve as submitted.
Second on that? Okay, do we need a voice vote on this? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody in the audience or online that would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda tonight? Got anything there, Mike?
I don't think we have anybody online. Let me just, no. Yep, nobody online.
Okay, then we'll move ahead. So the first item, the design review of the proposed mural has been withdrawn temporarily. So we'll move ahead with number 5, consideration of fire sprinkler exemption request for 960-970 North Shore Drive. Mike, you wanted to make an opening on that?
Sure, yeah, I just want to point out, we have in the packet a draft resolution, which is, not something we're all that used to when we're used to doing design review here, but it's the way the PCZBA does variances, and a good way to memorialize, the specifics of a decision. So the resolution, the draft in the packet is matching the staff recommendation for denial, but if we want to go the other way, of course, the ABR can make a motion to direct staff to draft a different resolution, such as for approval with conditions, and we could bring that back next month. The staff recommendation for denial is, in large part because exemptions are for exceptional, unusual circumstances, and this seems to be a rather typical, ordinary commercial building. And as difficult or expensive or inconvenient as it may be, there's really no reason to think it's more difficult or more inconvenient than many other commercial buildings. The village board looked at the ordinance and voted to require commercial buildings to retrofit for sprinklers twice in 2005 and 2010, and then discussed it last year and, left the requirement in place with the exemption procedures. So staff's view is that the intent of the village board is for buildings without exceptional circumstances to comply with the code. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Yep.
So here we go again. Does anybody want to start out there, or have you, Ted?
I'll start and see where this goes. Yeah, you had a long sit last month, so. I guess thank you for being here. It's better than getting voted down last month. And, even though I sent you all a letter, and I'm assuming you've read it, but I'd like to just touch on a couple points. And that is, even going through this process, it has been, educational. And I thought I knew a fair amount about this, and really it brought to light some things that I think kind of helped our case. And at the last meeting, I thought we did a pretty good job of going through the 7 points for exemption and making our case. But after reading the staff report and the resolution, I feel like I'm rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic here, but we'll do our best. Mr. Summers in the last meeting pointed out that retroactive sprinkler ordinance and fire ordinances are unusual, but he also pointed out that the village had a pathway for an exemption. And based on that criteria, Sure, our building is a commercial building like other buildings. And I think later on, I'd like to point out of the 27 buildings that have gone through a retrofit, a little deeper dive into what those buildings are and what was required and what the issues are. I think it kind of comes down to just very few buildings would actually qualify for a retrofit. Mr. Graff commented to one of my tenants that I don't want to do the retrofit, and he's right. And being in the building business for 20 years, I can see the issues involved in doing that. And also, just in terms of continuity and harmony with the village's residential ordinance, which is for new construction. For retrofits, it's required to have a 75% threshold for a retrofit. And that seems very reasonable, considering the IBC retrofit threshold is 50%. And in my conversations with Mr. Croak, the number of retrofits that were done in Lake Bluff since the ordinance, and that was, I believe, 07.
I think I was only saying I didn't know of any. I started here at the end of 2014, so I don't
Okay.
necessarily know of the first 7 years.
All right, well, I guess that could be investigated, but the number of voluntary retrofits that were not required because of renovation was 0. And again, I think that speaks to the fairness of the residential ordinance. Also, the risk of fire and injury and death in a residential fire is far greater, but the threshold for compliance is significantly less. Ms. Pudaba was at the last meeting and gave some testimony as to some of the things that she has done to address the evacuation of dogs, and she's here this evening and can address that further. Mr. Summers also corroborated in his testimony that doing a sprinkler system on a piecemeal, partial basis is not practical. And in my conversations with a contractor regarding sprinklers for the building, he corroborated that as well. It's not, you cannot install it in one unit, and the economies of that are greatly diminished, and then you can't activate the sprinkler system in one unit. So Mr. Croak asked for some information regarding pricing. I have that. I'll be able to share that later. Also on insurance rates and IRS code and tax issues, which are a benefit, but again, it's a deduction. It's not off your gross taxes. So it depends on what your income tax bracket is, what kind of adjusted gross income you have to deduct that from. So that would be wind at my back, but it is not like a free lunch. So I'm going to turn it over to my attorney, Nick, and he can address some of the other issues that are at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't say this is a continuation of the last hearing.
It's okay, it's not a formal public hearing.
That's right.
That's a good point.
It's okay.
Yep.
Yes, please, yes. Yes, stay close. Hi, I'm Nick Standiford. I'm a land use attorney at Shane Banks. I'm at 70 West Madison in the city, where Betsy apparently used to work when she was at JP Morgan, right? So crazy. I'm here tonight as an attorney for Mr. Brown. We've been through this process for a long time. We were here when the board was considering the text amendment to allow this exemption process to occur, and we tried to help shape that ordinance into what it is today. We followed that, I think, maybe through 4 or 5 meetings where I was here, Mr. Brown was here for several. Greg was here. for Mr. McCarthy. I always want to say Mr. McElroy, but it's Mr. McCarthy from McElroy Furs. He was here for several of the meetings, and now we have some of our tenants here at these meetings. So this has been a long road. It's been a really long road to get to this point. And we were really appreciative of the board's questions and their interest last time. I know that the chairman actually got to go out to the property, I believe, and inspect. And he got to meet with Betsy, and they went over the security plan, and they went over the building and the fact that there's no flammable materials in her space. So I think last time we were here, it seemed like the feedback was to provide some more information for the board to make the fully informed decision. So what we've done in the past couple weeks is we've worked with Betsy and worked on her, making sure the dogs are taken care of, getting the security plan or the safety plan for getting the dogs out kind of in order, and she'll talk about that. Mr. Brown will talk about kind of what he did to look through. There's a list here that I don't know if everyone had a copy of this, but there's a list of all of the properties that have been sprinkled, I think they say. And he'll go through that list and explain what those properties are like and how they're not similar to the present property. We'll also go through the list of the properties that haven't been sprinkled, and we'll show you that ours is more similar to those ones. And they'll probably be coming before you for an exemption request as well. Them being the Reclamation District. I believe ComEd is another. Terlato Wines is a third. There's quite a few that'll come before you and ask for the same thing, I'm sure. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the costs. An item I think you've all seen what was in the staff report, and you've seen what was in the one of those documents was a memo from the village attorney, and it talks about, okay, how do we factor in costs into all this? And my take on the memo is that it applies if you relate it to one of the factors. If you relate it to the difficulty in the practical, I got to get the factors in front of me so I'm super clear on this. Any unusual or practical difficulties in installing an automatic fire sprinkler system in the building. So we'll submit that the costs are evidence of that difficulty to retrofit a building. You'll see the costs are pretty high. So what Mr. Brown's done in the last couple months is he's found some quotes, and he'll show you what those quotes look like. And he'll talk about Ragsdale here, which is mentioned in the report, being only $7 a square foot, and he'll explain why his building is more than double that. And what's not mentioned in the $7 a square foot is that they had to do the water service, and he'll talk about his conversations that he had with the principal for Ragsdale about how much it cost them to do that work. At the end of the day, we will ask for a recommendation approving the exemption, and we will provide to you a list of proposed conditions. And those conditions we think are a fair way to make sure that the building is in compliance with the International Building Code, but it also addresses some of the things in the fire safety report, like the door in the back of the Yuppie Puppy. It'll address the manual pull station in Mr. McCarthy's space, and it'll talk about a few other things that we think are reasons that this board can leave here knowing that this building is safe and it's protected, and that if you grant the exemption, you shouldn't regret it. It's for a reason, and it's based on the standards that are set forth by the board. So I think with that being said, Greg, I'll have you come up first, and we'll do some questions about, Ted, we'll do some questions for you, not Greg, about the costs. Sure. And so why don't you go through and tell the board about kind of how you broke that down?
I'm going to just hand out, this is a breakdown on a preliminary budget for the building. And I think one of the things that is kind of difficult, or I don't want to say difficult, but just needs to be considered with a budget, and Nick alluded to this with Mr. Ragsdale, just in kind of a different conversation. I called Steve and like, hey, how's your sprinkler going? You got your water hooked up and all? And I go, if you don't mind me asking, like, what did this cost? And when I saw the number in the staff report and the number that Steve Ragsdale gave me, it's like, whoa, this is a completely different universe. And it's like, well, of course it is, because the cost of the fire sprinkler system is only a component in the cost of doing this. So I have no doubt that the $79,000 that Ragsdale spent on the base system is accurate. But the costs over and above that were pushing $200,000, according to Mr. Ragsdale. So I broke that down in terms of a high and a low budget estimate for the building. So, you know, the base price between 160, well, let me just back up even further. At the bottom, I put factors in the budget are as follows. Subject to routing and location of piping, water pressure, head type and location, freezing spaces, which Mr. Mr. McCarthy has in his first storage vault, gas suppression system that would be required for the GSA because of their computer room, water service, street opening, augering, location of control room, landscape, hardscape, pumping if required based on water pressure, permits, drywall repair, painting, and carpentry. I've attempted to capture those in this budget and coming up for just the base at $306,000, and then at the high, $536,000. What is also supplemental to that is lost rent. And Mr. McCarthy's been very clear about if this passes, he cannot conduct his business there. So I've got a lost rent factor, and there are going to be overtime charges and weekend labor charges, which adds an additional funds totaling at a low number of $447,000 and $677,000. Now, again, cost is not a consideration. Mr. Croak asked me if I put some numbers together, but I think this kind of illustrates the difference in cost between a new construction versus a retrofit, and a retrofit with a lot of different tenants, a lot of different needs and scheduling issues based on an existing building. So I hope that's helpful in kind of bringing to light what the magnitude of these costs are.
And you said that, you're not gonna charge this to your tenants, are you?
Well, as much as I'd like to, they're really nice here, and they're gonna string me, but I mean, I have leases in effect, and I cannot abrogate those leases and say, hey, you know, we're gonna pay more, but,
In future leases, you may have to.
well, I don't wanna make a commitment one way or the other, but it's a cost that will be borne by somebody, and for the next 5 or so years, it's gonna be me, so.
And if your tenants, has any of the tenants asked you for sprinklers?
No,
They want sprinklers?
no.
And then, so how did you compute the overtime surcharge? I want to remind the board, that was because if you want to do a project like this, you got to do it at night and on weekends, right?
Well, I mean, for example, Dr. Maroic, she does surgery. She's not gonna have pipe fitters in her space during business hours. That's just not gonna happen. Other tenants, the CrossFit gym, Jay Miles, you know, they need to run their businesses. They need to conduct business. They have payroll, they have expenses they need to meet, and just being able to conduct their business while that kind of work is going on is very difficult, if not impossible. And two, those weekend charges and overtime charges, those might be, it's kind of a guess. But there will be those charges, I do know that.
And so we'd like to submit this for the record, because we noticed that the ordinance makes reference to all the documents that are part of the materials given to the board, so we'd like to include this in the record, if that's okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
I think as far as the outline of the decision-making process here, as valuable as this information is, it's really not supposed to be part of it. Am I right?
Well, it is part of it, actually. So in the,
Well, so they're trying to relate it to one of the criteria, and ultimately it's the
Yeah, well,
board's decision whether it really does relate to
Yeah,
one of the criteria or
yeah,
not.
but I mean, it's just as a straight out, or 5 or
Right,
6 criteria, it's not in there.
Correct.
Yeah,
Well, I
okay.
I
But
should-
that doesn't mean we're ignoring it. I'm
But
just saying
let me
that.
just direct you to second page of the attorney's memo, the village attorney's memo. It says this: "Cost should be considered as it relates to the standards expressly set forth, i.e.
I'm sorry,
if there is
you're
an
right.
unusual cost that causes a difficulty in installation, increased cost due to the size and location of the building, et cetera." So it is relevant. The attorney even says that here. And
Cost
we-
should only be considered
Okay,
as it
So-
all right,
relates to
then
the.
I stand corrected.
So that's the cost, and so, this is a multi-tenant building.
Standards
So I had, so another thing we did the last month is we
Well,
looked
actually,
at-
this is in the last couple of days, but yes. A listing of the properties that do
Pass
have,
them out. Pass them out.
oh, yeah, I'll pass them out.
Okay, I can do it. Okay. you're talking.
Yeah. What I have here is there's a list of 26 units that have gone,
These are 26 properties that have been sprinkled. And this was
been sprinkled
This
or.
is in the list that was included in the board's packet.
Yeah, and just a clarification on some of these is that I left out Stonebridge in the numbering here. But a review, let me see if there's another. So I went through these properties and like, well, what's with, how are these properties comparable? You get a couple of them. And of those 26 properties that are listed, there are 11 of them that are apartments over 2 units, which are residential units. Seven of them are one-tenant buildings. So in terms of controlling the construction, the time, the coordination, it's one tenant, not 6 tenants. 4 of them, what I've determined is I call CBD proximity, central business proximity. So in other words, they're downtown, there's a building right next door, so in terms of access to fire equipment on all 4 sides, they don't have it. In terms of spreading the fire, there's buildings right next door. So in terms of the exemption process, in terms of proximity and just that criteria, I would put them almost disqualified for the exemption.
Meaning that if they applied under this process, you don't think they would satisfy the factor?
Well, I think there's a much higher risk in the central business district right downtown Lake Bluff than there is on a large parcel in the industrial park. And
And you're on the summary sheet right now.
I'm on the summary sheet. And then,
Which is the shorter one.
yeah, it's just the second page with a fold in it. And then, Mr. Croke, you can help me with this one, but I put 2 of these properties would be required to do sprinklers based on the IBC criteria, and that would be the veterinary building, it's called the Smedbo building, but that was completely renovated a couple of years ago.
It already had sprinklers before the renovation, though.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, they would have had to do them anyways. Were the sprinklers installed per the ordinance?
Yeah, they were.
Okay, and what about the village market?
That was installed before my time, so I'm not sure if it was part of
Okay.
a remodel or
Okay.
just for the ordinance.
Well, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that those are 2 buildings that would be triggered by just the current IBC.
Which is that if you make a
Requirements.
significant repair, then
Or alteration, yeah.
Or alteration, you're required to put sprinklers in.
Yeah,
Well, there's really 2 parts to the IBC, or International Property Maintenance Code, requirement. There's the 50% remodel, but then they also have the caveat that if the existing water service doesn't accommodate sprinklers, you don't have to do it under the international existing building code. So by that, almost none of the existing buildings would have to do it, because almost no existing building has a water service large enough to accommodate sprinklers
okay.
without having the sprinklers, which is different than the single-family 75% threshold, because that does not have the caveat about water service size. So in single-family, once you hit 75%, you have to do it even if your water service is not of size.
Right, but I would be hard-pressed to think that an inch or an inch and a quarter water service, which would be a newer home, and a lot of existing homes, their water service is 3/4 inch, would be sufficient to sprinkle a house that's on fire. I mean, that's That, we need Mr. Summers here for that one, but I don't know.
So where are you on your list?
And then the and then there are 3 buildings that are multi-tenant. One of those is a multi-story building, 900 North Shore Drive. And the others, you know, the owner of the building did not feel compelled to press it like I have in terms of the difficulty in doing it. And then 3 properties were kind of deleted from the list based on.
And with respect to the 900 North Shore, that's
Yeah.
like a 2 or 3
I think
story office tower?
I think it's like, it's at least 2, and it might be 3 stories, I don't recall.
And that has
it's
an,
2.
that has a.
2? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that has an elevator?
Yes,
So it's dissimilar in that regard. Yours is a 1-story building.
correct.
And so, so we wanted to show the board that information because in the staff report, it said that this is very similar to many of the commercial buildings that have required to get sprinklers. But if you take a deep dive into the sprinkler list, we're not like any of these. And in fact, the non-sprinkled buildings list is here. And if we could pass that around and ask that these be included in the record as well. So these are some of the ones I mentioned: Turlotto, Post Office, Water Reclamation District, ComEd, Park District. So a lot of these are utilities or separate municipal entities or governmental entities. So I don't know if just being a municipality, you know, or a government or a utility is an exceptional circumstance or an unusual circumstance. And I will say this too, neither exceptional circumstances or unusual circumstances are in the factors, in the express factors for you to consider, right? If you look at the factors, that's not in there. So our building fits better in this list than in the sprinkle list. This is
Yeah, those are going to be required. Yeah, these will be required unless they seek an
Unless they
exemption.
seek an
But
exemption.
also, isn't it, according to Mr. Croak's letter, the Water Reclamation District will be getting an exemption and Commonwealth Edison will be getting an
Oh,
exemption?
that's certainly not decided. They might apply, but
I
that's
thought that
certainly not
was,
decided.
I thought that was inferred in your summary.
No, they might have, you know, exceptional circumstances. We might see exceptional circumstances with them, but they haven't applied yet, so. that's
So they're gonna be
speculation whether they
required.
Actually will,
To do that.
unless they apply and come here on this process, yeah.
All right, I must have misread your,
Well, it says they may be potential candidates for an exemption.
okay.
So we'll submit that our building is multi-tenant. There's only 3 buildings on here that are multi-tenant. We've addressed those on the ones that have been sprinkled. There's another multi-tenant on the one that's to be sprinkled or unless they seek an exemption. So we would submit that we're much closer to that. And our practical difficulty is we have multiple tenants who are sitting in this room that are asking not to have it sprinkled. So that is a big difference, and that's a reason why, we think a compelling reason why we shouldn't have to sprinkle. You mentioned about the federal tax incentives. There was a mention in the staff report about that. Explain that in a little more detail. Why does that not
Well-
as appealing as it sounds?
Well, it's helpful, but it's a tax deduction. It's not off your tax bill. And I think you understand. So, you know, you've got a tax bill of, you know, $100,000 and you can reduce that adjusted gross income by what you invest. But it's only the percentage of your tax bracket. So I don't know where I'm going to end up tax bracket wise, but I'd really like to say I could write a $500,000 expense off my adjusted gross income, but I'm not really going to be able to do that. But it would be, and then I don't know if it carries forward from year to year. So those are questions for my accountant. But it is something that's offered. It is a little elusive in terms of what that actually means dollar-wise.
In the next page of the staff report, it mentioned that, this is from FSCI, nothing inherent to sprinkler design that prevents doing one tenant space at a time. What would be your response to that?
Well, I guess theoretical, but also theoretically, that's true, but also Mr. Summers in there goes into the impracticality of doing a piecemeal system. You can't power up a system one unit at a time, and the economies of doing that are just makes the numbers look even worse.
And the next paragraph of the staff report, it said that it has something from the National Fire Sprinkler Association, and it says this: while other fire protection systems are also crucial, none hold the same potential to reduce damage and save lives by controlling or extinguishing a fire in the precious minutes it takes fire department to arrive. Today's lightweight synthetic building materials have blazes burning hotter and faster than ever before. Is your building use lightweight synthetic building materials?
It's concrete block, steel deck for the roof, and steel bar joists, trusses for the rafters.
And you reviewed the ordinance in the proposed ordinance in the packet?
The resolution?
The resolution?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I feel like I'm just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic here, but it feels a little fait accompli in terms of what we're attempting to do here, so.
So with that, we'd like to call some of our business owners. So Betsy, if you can come up and talk about what you've done the last month, and kind of what your idea is for how to make sure that these dogs are safe without sprinklers, that'd be great.
After the last meeting, Chief Graff and I talked, and it kind of became apparent to me that I need to do more to ease the job of the firefighters if this ever happened, if I ever had to evacuate. So first thing I did was I got approval from Nick Mancuso, to use the keys, give the fire department authority to use the keys to their Knox box and use all their fencing areas, any of their fencing areas if I had to evacuate dogs. So I've got his approval to do that. So we have a very close place to get the dogs to. And I want to introduce you to goat leads.
I don't know how we're going to get this in the record, but
These are, I've got several of these. There's yellow concrete pylons out the back, along the whole back driveway. I've got several of these that really just wrap around each one, and on each one of these you can attach a dog. And it would be, all the firefighters have to do is get the dog out the back door. They get the dog out the back door and hand it off, and they can be easily clipped using the slip leads that we literally have pre-looped. Getting off on hooks. So the firefighters, they only have to figure out how to use those things. They literally just throw it around the dog's neck. Get them out, get them at the door. I'm going to have an explanation, or perhaps I could have fire department, as long as one person there knows what these are and how they attach to the around. Just literally just clip them around the concrete pylons on each end, and it holds them. And then we're off, and we've got enough where we can clip 65 dogs. And people will be taking these and running them just right next door over to the fenced area. So, even since you've been out, I've been able to make some more changes in this. Sorry, I hope you can all hear me. I hope you can all hear me.
We can hear you here, but there may be people on the Zoom or on the cable
So
TV that want to
anyway,
hear you, so
now know
it
what
would be
goalies
good to
look like.
capture that.
And my goal and hope was to make this a much easier process for the fire department if they get out there, to know what they're doing easier without wondering what they're gonna do with the dogs. So, and then being able to get them very quickly over into a fenced area. I'm hoping that's easier all the way around to do it, so.
all right. And then what would a shutdown for even a day mean to your business?
It's not just the financial part, it's the clients that depend on us to go to work to bring their dogs to us. That we have maybe 50 dogs a day in there, and the majority of them are people on their way to Abbott. They have to go to work, or on their way to work, and they don't have somewhere to bring their dog. And it puts all of them out of inconvenience as well, because you can't just all of a sudden bring your dog somewhere new. But yeah, I mean, one day, the revenue, I don't have deep pockets over there.
Well, weekends and nights don't work either.
Oh, weekends and nights don't work at all, no. We never have dogs that aren't there. In fact, on weekends, we have 30 or 40 dogs boarding. And during the week, we're probably at least 20, in the summer, we're full, 40 dogs a night, every single night, July and August.
And then in the FSCI report on page 4, there was this door in the back. I understand that some
and
sort
Bob, when we went through and I showed you that door, and I think you gave me the idea, and as long as I just put it's really easy to use, as long as there's a thing that just says push up by the handle. I don't know
It's
what-
really not even a handle, it's a little thing you flip.
yeah. And
And it takes no effort whatsoever as long, I said, well, you should put an arrow there, because it says your tendency to flip it down instead of
If
up.
I flip up the door, I mean, it's very easy to do, it's just, so I'm gonna put that on the door, just saying, flip up, toss up, and then.
and this door is not locked, correct?
Never, no.
And it's just
No,
to
it's never
pre-
locked.
it's
It's
just to
never
pre-
locked, it's a gate.
It's a gate to prevent the dogs from going outside, right?
Yes.
In front of the
It's
actual.
actually a bigger risk to not have it up for the safety of the dogs. I could conceivably leave it open at night, so if anybody needed to get in at night, the dogs are secure in their suites, that I could leave it open every night.
But you would agree that you will never lock this, correct? If
You can't lock.
the exemption was granted?
You can't lock.
Okay, thank you.
There's no locking mechanism on it,
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to?
unless there's any questions.
Okay. So up next, we'll call Greg. He wasn't able to talk to the board last time, so we thought it'd be important to get his testimony here tonight. He's been at all these hearings before this, and he'll tell you the reason why.
Thank you very much for letting me come and speak about this. I've been a resident and business owner in Lake Bluff for 29 years, as I've already told you. I have been in that location for 29 years. I have had a lovely time there. I scratch my head thinking about sprinklers. I had a landlord who decided to sprinkle my building in Winnetka, and I left Winnetka after being there for 25 years. And I moved everything up here to Lake Bluff. And FERS and sprinkler systems, and FERS and water, and FERS and gas, none of it works. So I can't be in a situation where I put my clients' product at risk like that. If a sprinkler ever went off, whether it was gas or water, it's 100% loss. The value in my vault, maybe.
Don't say that on the record.
Lots.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's not, it's way beyond, in multiples of the value of the building. And I'm somewhat disheartened because I thought we'd gotten through this thing, and when you guys adjusted the prerequisites for exemptions, I thought that we would be able to get by that. In order for me to, and I have product, clients' product in my vault year-round. There's quite a few people that don't take things out, or they take them out partially at some time of the year and then bring it back and that sort of thing. For me to try and retrofit something in there, which I wouldn't do, but if that were to happen, I basically have to go find another alternative vault to take my product to and make sure it's safe somewhere else. I mean, it's like having pipe fitters running around in a fur vault. What do I do with the product? What happens to it? And from what I know from construction of building quite a few stores and buildings, pipe fitting is not necessarily the cleanest of all the trades. It is a big time messy, oil all over the place, cutting stuff in and out of the building. I mean, it's a security hazard. It would cost me a fortune just to like mess around with a contractor running in and out of the building to do that. In addition to that, my vault goes below zero. I mean, excuse me, freezing many, many times throughout the year, okay? And that's like 70% of my space. So, it's a difficult thing for me to, have to work with or deal with, so. I would love to continue being in Lake Bluff after 29 years and also being a resident here for more than, almost half of that. I would love for you to be able to find your way to give us a dispensation and let us go on with our businesses and be happy tenants in the lovely town of Lake Bluff.
I just had a couple questions.
Sure.
Kind of curiosity. but,
Absolutely.
So when you say vault, what is that? What,
I'll call it a storage area.
and is it,
You know what, I really don't want to get into too much detail, okay, because I'm on public, whatever, right?
so, okay, so let me ask questions and you can say, I can't answer that because there might be some things you can't answer. So is it a space that is constructed differently than the other spaces in the building? Like, does
I'm
it
not going to
have
answer that.
extra thick walls, or, and you said it gets really cold?
I'm
Is it-
not getting into that.
Okay. Okay,
I mean,
no, that's
I
fine.
mean, I'll tell you this much, that the object of the thing is to have it cold in there,
So
okay?
it's more or
Very-
less like a
very-
freezer,
Very different. than-
very different than normal
Yes,
spaces.
yeah.
And is it completely contained, or do you know what I'm asking? Like, is it, if it's just that space that's getting that cold?
It's what's called positive air pressure, so that there's more air coming out of that space, so that when you open the doors, the air is blowing out of the room, so that there's no impurities blowing into the air. It
And
is an extremely clean space. It's all HEPA air filtered. The room is being scrubbed more than probably about 6 times an hour. I mean, it's just, I don't want to get into too much. I mean, I got a lot of valuable stuff in there
Right.
of other people.
Right.
And I have to take care of it, so.
Right.
And I've had a, knock on wood, very good record of doing that for 90-plus years.
So
So-
if there was smoke in the building, in your, let's say in your space, not in your vault, but in your space, would that smoke get into the vault? Or,
No,
no?
positive pressure.
And what about if there was a fire? Does it have any fire protection, any walls that go around it, or is it just regular construction?
I can't
You
get into
can't
that.
answer that.
Come on.
Okay.
It has its own fire alarm system, correct?
It is. I don't want to even go into alarm stuff. Okay?
I'd like to ask you,
I'll tell you this much, it's way beyond what anything, whatever you could think of, it's,
okay,
I'm just
It's
trying to
just-
get a
Yeah.
feeling for this space and how it is, and if there's any way to not sprinkle
most
that
people
particular.
most people who get invited to come into that space and look there, their jaw drops and they go, holy, 4-letter
So
word.
let me ask this question then, and you can answer it if you don't have to answer it, but if a fire was somehow magically in that vault, would it be able to spread beyond the vault? Do you know
I-
what I'm asking?
I can't answer that because I don't have any experience in that,
Yeah.
I can't tell you.
Right.
But I can tell you that I'll know that it's happening within seconds.
Okay.
I do have a question for you, because you're listed as retail,
Yes, sir.
and I've looked in your window, and I see you've got a small little reception room,
Yes, sir.
and I assume you've got a place where some people can stand and look at themselves, and it's not where you have a dozen people in there buying furs, like going to Macy's,
No. It's not a rack operation.
right?
It's what you call salon selling. We don't, nothing comes out to go to a customer unless we bring it out to them,
Okay.
all right?
Who's next? Anybody?
Questions? Sorry, I couldn't
That's
answer.
okay,
That's okay.
totally understandable.
Thank you.
Okay, Robin, do you have anything different from last time, or do you want anything to add, or are you just here to listen? You can come up if you want, it's gotta be, it's gotta be something new.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
So, you know, I have the veterinary hospital in there, and I just think we deal, just like Betsy probably sees this, but we deal with a lot of dogs with stress. So I have an in-house trainer that works with very stressed, like anxious dogs. And then we feel like 50% of our clients, of the pets, are stressed, anxious, on meds when they come in. So doing any work during the day would be a real setback for us, you know, because it doesn't take much to bother some dogs, you know, and cats too. Cats will be climbing the walls, but doing the work during the day would be really, really difficult in our space, whether it be surgery, radiology, training, exam rooms, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, if Ted has to incur the extra costs of doing all this work after hours, weekends, you know, and we work weekends, we work Saturday as well. So that's would be my comment, just the inconvenience of doing any of that work during the day. Okay, thank you.
So I want to apologize because I said that the ordinance didn't say that unusual circumstances should be taken into account, but it is in there, any unusual or practical difficulty. So I wanted to make sure I got that right. It doesn't say exceptional circumstances, it does say unusual. But this is an unusual situation because you've just seen a pretty eclectic mix of tenants. That none of them say they want sprinklers. We have a landlord who says he doesn't want sprinklers. This, you just heard about a fur vault that was so sophisticated, we didn't even want to talk about it. I mean, that's unusual, right? So I think we've heard that this mix is unusual, and we've seen the costs, practical difficulties of installing it. The costs are demonstrative of that. It's very, very expensive because it's not easy. It's not easy to get into these different tenant spaces at the same time. It's not easy kicking them out for a period of time. It's not easy bringing the water service line out. It's not easy. Last time we talked about you have to create a room, right, for the fire control. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this. It's not as simple as put some sprinkler heads in a building. In a multi-tenant office space like this, that's not simple. And it's unusual, and there's practical difficulties that go into it. The size and location of the building, that's your next factor to look at. And before I go down through all of them, I want to make sure that everyone's clear. The ordinance says the Architectural Board of Review shall consider some or all of the following criteria when taking final action on the application. So it's at your discretion. We don't have to meet every single one of the standards or the criteria. We just have to meet enough of them that the board thinks it's satisfactory. So we'll submit that Roman numeral I is satisfied. There are unusual and practical difficulties. Number 2, the size and location of the building in proximity to adjacent building uses. When the gentleman from FSCI was on the phone last time, he said, and it's in his report too, this is not next to an adjacent building like those buildings we saw downtown that sprinkle, right? This is one that's got some separation between its next use. It's in an industrial park where there's plenty of space to go around, as you've seen in your handouts. If you've seen the overhead, there's a driveway that wraps around. So there's firefighting abilities and shouldn't be hindered due to the layout of this space in this industrial park. The third is hazards in or around the building. There aren't any hazards. I don't even think there's many trees or anything that get in the way on the outside. I mean, I think the fire chief could tell you that you could fight a fire in this building without having to deal with something like a fire downtown. FSCI said that this was also satisfactory, this building, with respect to that factor. Number 4, the occupancy classification and occupant load of the building. So previously we talked about churches, and I know that this is not about churches. I saw the staff report saying that that was a text amendment way back when. This is about this exemption. But that was a policy decision made by the village board that said that churches, if they install a central monitoring system, they're okay, they're safe enough, right? I doubt that the churches have as many exits and entrances as this building, which has 2 entrances and exits throughout each tenant space. It has less flammable materials. I mean, the churches are probably made a lot of wood, and these hardly have any. Churches are assembly uses. We have no assembly uses here. So if you have concerns about making a decision, oh, it's not going to be safe, well, the board already said the churches are safe enough with the fire alarm system. And we have that fire alarm system. Mr. Brown spent $90,000 to install it. The only one that doesn't is Mr. McElroy. He's not connected to the central monitoring system, but he's got his own. He's got his own, so they're covered. If you look at the FSCI report on page 4, all the fire safety, this table is very important. If you look at it, he's got everything. Yes, full fire alarm, every unit, yes, yes, yes. The only one was the Mr. McCarthy's unit, but we just heard he's got his own. Fire exit, yes, 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 yes. Exit access, yes, 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 yes. There's an unknown, and there's another unknown. EM lighting and exit signs, yes, 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 yes. This is a safe building. Mr. Brown is taking care to make this building safe, and it's confirmed in the FSCI report. So that's another consideration to take into account. The access to the building for firefighting, we kind of talked about that. That's kind of related to the size and location, also about the hazards around the building. Okay, the next one, number 6, is whether the building meets or exceeds the village's code requirements for egress and other life safety requirements. Well, I mentioned there's 2 exits and entrances in each unit space, and there's also, I hear, an overhead door in each space. So there's plenty of ingress and egress. And then the last is whether or not, notwithstanding the village's local amendments, the adopted edition of the International Building Code and/or any other building codes adopted by the village would require an automatic fire sprinkler system in the building. Well, this is an existing building. It's not new construction. If it was new, we agree. Sprinklers would be required. But if you look at the International Building Code, it talks about triggers. And if you do a certain amount of work in a unit or in your building as a whole, I think it's over 50% of the building, then you have to put sprinklers in. And so what we've done is we put together a list of proposed conditions. And we would just like to be governed by the International Building Code. That's what we'd like. That's number 5. The other are that we have a dog escape prevention gate at the rear of Yuppie Puppy that is not locked and shall not be locked. That's number 1. So we think that's a condition that's sensible and would be a good, if you wanted to condition this approval, that would be a good one. That's number 1. The next is 2, a manual pull station in McElroy First shall be installed. So the FSCI report said that there wasn't a manual pull station. We're happy to install that. Number 3, fire alarm system in McElroy First shall integrate with the building's central fire alarm system. I hope you're okay with that. If you're not, you got to tell me because I'll take it out.
I don't know how you do it.
Okay, well then I guess,
You have to tear apart my whole place.
well then I guess you put if feasible at the end. And then number 4, the Knox box, there was a question about the Knox box, not having a key to every space. Well, the Knox box has a master key. So we'd submit that there shall be a Knox box, it currently has a master key, and it shall continue to hold such key. And number 5 is what I mentioned, the building shall be sprinklered if required under the criteria of the International Building Code for existing structures. So if you're worried about, okay, we don't want to give Mr. Brown a free ride forever on the sprinkler requirement, that's the trigger.
What's the key thing you just said?
That-
There's no key going out to my space.
Well, if you change 50% of the building, I think that's one of the triggers, or any higher occupancy classification, that's when you have to put sprinklers in. That's what the International Building Code says. The village decided to amend that provision to make it this exemption process. All we're asking for is to be treated fairly under that code. So I think there was a decision. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
There was one other thing we talked about last time, and that's to put some sort of an alarm light over each door, so wherever that if there's a fire, wherever it occurs, in whichever bay it is, that would show where it is.
We can do that. I'll talk to that. I'll talk to that. in a
Okay,
minute.
good.
So I'll leave you with this. Last time, I think, is Mr. Cottrell? Cottrell, how do you say your name? Cottrell. So Mr. Cottrell, I think, said, I think this is the time where the rubber meets the road on all this, right? The village board gave this body the decision-making authority to approve this exemption. If you deny it, as the village attorney's report says, it does go to the village board if we appeal it. But we ask that you not put this in the village board's hands. You're the experts. The village board has told you that you have the authority to make a decision to grant this exemption. This has been a super long road for us and Mr. Brown on this exemption process, and we want the rubber to meet the road right now. And we ask for your vote in exempting Mr. Brown from the sprinkler requirement, conditioned on these 6 conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it our turn yet?
Yes, it's
Okay.
been your turn, yeah.
Can we hear from, can we hear from Seth from FSCI?
Oh, yeah, you said, yeah, Seth is
Yeah.
here.
So Seth Sommer from FSCI is on the Zoom call. Seth, I imagine there's some things there you could address or respond to, like the difficulty of doing the separate systems for separate tenants and the first storage room and some of that. Are you able to speak?
Is it bed?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, now you can.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, yeah, I've been on the whole time, guys, so thanks. Yeah, I don't have a whole ton to add since last time. I think the applicants have described their situation pretty well. I think I mentioned this last time. The ordinance, whoever, decided to adopt it and at that time had put the exemption process in there for a reason. So I think it's meant to be a way to look at these things, so there is definitely some rationale behind going through this process and hearing them out and the reasons why they feel they should be exempt from a sprinkler system. So I just believe in the process, it being fair and equitable for everybody. In regards to the sprinkler system being added space by space, the applicant's team admitted that you can do it. It may not be economically feasible because if you install it space by space, you have to reallocate all those resources and materials and labor and everything each time for each space, the cost of materials, the availability of materials. So you do lose definitely some economy behind it. And yes, retrofitting a building is more expensive than putting it in a new building because of all the existing conditions that you have to contend with. So I do agree that you are able to consider cost in whether or not the sprinkler system should be exempt or not. I think that's fair. Looking at what the international standard is in the IBC and the existing building code is also fair. Those are all things that you guys have to think about and consider in allowing this. I will say as well, and we all probably know this, sprinkler systems are meant to save lives, to allow people more time to get out of the buildings. It's true you don't have people sleeping here, so everybody that's in the buildings are awake, and if the building's not occupied, nobody's there besides the dogs. And I think, yeah, that consideration needs to be given to Yuppie Puppy for having the escape plan for the animals if something happened. If a fire were to occur in the building, if an exemption is granted, it's going to, not having a sprinkler system is going to subject the building to more damage, not only from the fire, but from smoke, given the response time from the fire department. I don't know, maybe the fire chief could speak better to how long it will take before they can get there and get water on something. Um, you know, you've got maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Again, I don't know what it is exactly, but for that fire to do some damage, which is also going to put the tenants out of business for a while, and there's going to be some real downtime dealing with that. I'm just giving these points for you guys to consider. Not that you couldn't have come up with these on your own, but you know, I deal with this stuff on a regular basis, and there's a lot of real things to consider. It's a tough decision. I'm not envious of you guys that you have to make this decision. But certainly having some conditions, if you consider the exemption, would be very wise. And yeah, if you guys have other questions regarding any of the things that you heard tonight, I'll be happy to give my opinion on those. Or if you have any questions in general, I'll be on the call still to take any of those questions.
Anybody have any questions for Seth?
I had just one really brief question. I know I'm stuck on this, and I know we're not gonna get into exactly what your vault involves, but are there any precedents for, like, bank vaults or walk-in freezers or whatever, saying that if you're sprinkling a space, you don't have to sprinkle those?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, thank you for asking that, because I did think about that when Mr. McElroy was speaking. So no, those are not exempt spaces. Walk-in coolers, walk-in freezers, vaults, basically any space has to be sprinkled when a sprinkling system is required. So in freezers, for example, you can use different types of sprinklers. There are dry systems that you can use that don't have water in them for those spaces. You know, sometimes we see buildings that the entire building is a walk-in cooler or freezer, and they have antifreeze systems. Now, granted, the systems are going to be more expensive when you introduce special types of systems, certainly, but I think it would be, you know, something to actually track and see if the vault is getting below freezing. You know, I'm not doubting Mr. McElroy, but it's not very common to have a space go below freezing unless it's the winter and there's no heat in the building. So there could be some considerations made to require the space not to go below 40 degrees, for example, which, you know, I would guess that would maintain low enough humidity and temperatures for the furs and everything that are stored in there. But I'm not an expert on it by any means, but you know, I've seen many different situations.
You can't blow heat on the furs. It dries the leather out. In a matter of a day or two of any heating going into that space would damage the furs.
Chief, did you want to say something?
Thanks, Seth.
Sure.
Thank you. David Graff, Fire Chief, Village of Lake Bluff. A lot of good conversation tonight, a lot of good testimony and so forth. If nothing else, we certainly have heightened our awareness of fire safety and opportunities to be better protected and better react to the potential of fire. Hopefully that's one of our positive takeaways. I would say to this board that over the 18 years that this requirement has been in place, the village board and this board has consistently and periodically reviewed the requirement as we did in the past year about adding the exemption that wasn't there until just the last year. And that was put in for some specific type of buildings, such as the picnic shelters at the beach and some other open structures and so forth, that gave us a way to deal with those particularly. It was not anticipated, or at least certainly not by me, that this particular type of building or occupancy would be considered for an exception. So I appreciate the time and the effort that everybody's put into this. From the fire department standpoint, we would urge you to deny this request for an exemption. We think that fire sprinklers have proved their value in many regards in our village and elsewhere, and that the concerns and so forth can be dealt with. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Is it either our fire department or other fire departments, let's say someone's boarding dogs, for firemen to run in and out of a burning building to save the dogs? Would that be required by your people?
That's a fascinating question. From the standpoint that I don't really have an answer for that. I have talked with the owner of Yup Puppy in the past, back when they first opened, and we talked after the last meeting. I really don't have a good answer for that, okay? No, and I don't know, and I've kind of tested a couple of other departments around and found no one that has a similar type occupancy that has experience with that. The function of the fire department for the life safety portion, when responding to a structure that has a fire incident or something along that line, is the first order of business is life safety, followed by property conservation and protection. It's a matter of putting in place the forces that you have and how you're going to deal with that. Life safety, in many cases where there is a fire and so forth, that means search. That means, depending on the level of smoke conditions, fire conditions, how one goes about ensuring that the building is unoccupied, okay? We've talked about different types of structures. If it's a single-use occupancy, that's a bit different. The question that was just asked about a strobe over each one of the occupancies to indicate where the alarm is initially coming from, whether it's a sprinkler or a fire alarm. If you look at that map, unless we have a visible fire when we first get there, we're going to need to search each one of these spaces, okay? We will know, and we do know, that the Uppy Puppy presents an interesting situation. That was a very interesting presentation of a potential that I just saw tonight. I think that's very interesting. It has great potential. I'm a dog owner and have been for years. I know how dogs react to various things and so forth. If you have a high-stress situation and you have a guy come in the turnout gear we have on with a backpack, breathing, air, and all of that type of stuff, I'm not sure how the dogs are going to react to us. But I guess we'll find out if we have to do that. One of my dogs would love it. The other dog wouldn't be too happy. So that's an interesting situation. We'll have to, I know I'm rambling on your question, but it's a good question. But it goes also to the basics of a sprinkler system in this building. And I'll use over here Village Market as an example. We talked about this when we were doing the last round of renewal of the ordinance and so forth. Someone asked the question, you asked the question. That building was retrofitted sprinklers based on this ordinance, okay? Within the last 2 years, we had a fire in the basement of that building, and you know the type of construction it is and the potential of what could have occurred there. A single head sprinkler put the fire out within the first 5 minutes. And the only issue was water on the floor to deal with, which we promptly turned off when we arrived, okay? If that had not been the case in the area of the occupancy, we would have had a tremendous loss in the downtown area. A fire sprinkler system, we need to remember, is, and it's very rare for it to go beyond a single head activation. And we have multiple units here. Each owner or each tenant understandably anticipates that sprinkler going off in their own space. Potentially, it could be a CrossFit and Yappy Puppy is down here, the fire alarm goes off, the sprinkler puts it out, and we don't even get smoke to the fur, okay? Could be next door. Could be, could be. The reason we have felt that the sprinkler system was appropriate and we have required this over all these years is that the sprinkler system is still the best proven system for life safety and property conservation with the least amount of damage to a building. One needs to consider if a fire starts and reaches the stage of open burning to activate a sprinkler system without the action of the sprinkler system, that fire is going to go on for a long period of time. It's going to grow. The damage from the fire, the heat, the smoke, and so forth is going to multiply very rapidly. Okay? The sprinkler system has proven to put itself out in a very small area. As I said, the majority of the time single head, and then we're dealing with cleanup of steam and water in that particular area. It's a proven system.
One of the questions raised earlier was, in the event an alarm goes off, what's the response time?
Okay, to that building, to that area, the industrial park, there are components to time, okay? The first component of time is detection of the incident, okay? And when the detection of the incident occurs, the alarm system is activated, notifies what's generally referred to as the alarm company or central station, and then the alarm company central station has to activate a call into the dispatch center, okay? I go through that process because that's a time we often don't think about, but your alarm company, sir, or the one for the building and so forth, who knows how long that's going to take. It could be very quick, or it could take time. But let's put a time on that and say, typically from the experience that we have and what we observe over time, you're probably talking about 3 minutes, okay? 3 minutes. Now, the dispatch center has the information from the alarm company. They will be putting it in the CAD system. The CAD system determines what units from what station are going to go based on the type of call. They activate a tone, beep, beep, beep. And the people in the station, in this particular case, any call, any fire alarm that we have at your building, we bring 2 fire departments immediately because of the potential for loss and the potential for damage in that station. It's not just Lake Bluff. We bring Libertyville right away, and we have Lake Forest as the backup to that, okay? Time. The drive time from here to this particular building, given normal circumstances and so forth, I'm going to say is about 4 minutes. All right, so let's just say all of that goes really well. Each one of those components could be a little longer. But anyways, where are we? We're at 8 minutes, right? So we had a fire that started this discussion. Who knows how long that's been burning, what's the severity, how much smoke do we have, how much heat, how much temperature, where is it in the building? We have a fire that's reached a point that it set off the fire alarm. We have the dispatch time, we have the response time. Once we get on location right now with this particular building, we have to figure out where the problem is, okay? If it's at night, we need to go to the Knox box, get the keys, and then start to open individual units and go into the units. Or if it's fire, we might be able to find it pretty quickly, you know? But I'm sorry, I have a tendency to expand. I hope that answers your question. So what you're talking about is probably before we are effectively working on a fire, it could be from 6 to 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Can we ask a few questions?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, Chief, our system is addressable, the devices are addressable, so that you would know exactly where the fire is with the addressable panel.
That's great, and I hope that works.
Well,
And I only say that my experience is that it depends on the receiving, alarm monitoring, and the progression of that. I'm talking real world, okay? There's a difference between you having an addressable system and you getting, or anybody getting there and looking at the alarm panel, and that tells us where to go, okay? As opposed to that information being transferred to the dispatch center and then passed along. In that particular case, it's of great help, okay? I think what you're telling us that you have a good system. I appreciate that.
So, just want to say thank you for hosting all the birthday parties at the fire station. I've been to 2 or 3.
Sorry, could you guys step up to the mic just for the online and record if we're gonna have a thank you?
Just wanted to say thanks for hosting all the birthday parties at the fire station. I've been to 2 or 3 of them, and it's fun to watch them getting all that gear with the little 2 and 3 year olds. So watching. So thank you for opening that up, and you know you guys are a big part of the community. So thank you. My question is, you were part of the hearing process for the text amendment for this exemption process, right?
Yes, sir.
You were also part of the process that the churches were exempted in, I think it was 2010.
Perhaps.
Do you have any opinion on the exemption that was given to the churches?
My opinion would be that information on both sides was presented to the village board, and the village board made a decision.
What is your opinion?
My opinion is the village board made the best decision for the village that they felt was the case.
Would you require sprinklers in the churches if you had your say?
If they were building it from scratch, certainly, sir.
What about it? It's existing.
I'm not going to second guess the village board and this board. They made a decision based on the information they had, and I think that's what we stand by.
And then in this process for the exemption, the board didn't say that only municipal buildings can get exemptions, right?
I don't think that was the intention at all.
They didn't. They opened it up to any building that's currently not sprinkled can apply for this, right?
Yes, sir.
And then, what is the most common cause of fires?
I would say it's mechanical, electrical, or human error.
A lot of fires happen like with kitchens, right?
Yeah.
And the market fire, how did that fire start?
That started from an electrical malfunction in the storage area in the basement.
The kitchens are a concern, right? If you're cooking and using open flames.
Well, if you want to start talking about kitchens and open flames, you're talking about an entirely different section of the code, and there'll be no exceptions for sprinkler requirement in that area, sir.
But residential homes that are currently existing don't have to sprinkle, correct?
New ones do.
I think we've made it pretty clear that any new home built in the village has to be sprinkled. Any home in the village over 70% requires sprinkling.
If it's existing, if you're fixing it up over 70%, then the homes have to be sprinkled, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And would you recommend that all homes be sprinkled?
Yes.
New and existing?
Yes.
And existing without any alteration requirement? Is your home sprinkled?
No. Volunteer fireman doesn't make enough money to do that. A volunteer fireman. Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, well, here we go. Is it our turn yet? Art, you want to start again?
Sure. I just had a question to Mr. Brown. The list of buildings that sprinklers were added to, I got in the car and drove around and took a look at them. And on the list that was in our packet, and it's on your list as well, number 2 and number 4 and 5, in particular, particularly 4 and 5, how would that be different than your building?
It probably is not that different. The buildings are in my area. I think that there's probably 2 differences. One difference is that I decided to.
Ted,
All right,
could
can
you
we
use
go
the
to the
microphone?
mic?
One of them, either the portable one or the.
Yeah, I've not seen the inside of that building, and I don't know the mix of the tenants. One of the things is that I have decided, based on my experience, that this is a colossal undertaking, and I have worked tirelessly to seek my exemption because I think it's worth it. I think it is a qualified exemption. The other part is, I think if you look at my building and the uniqueness of the tenants, it's not an office building where everybody offices. I've got a very unique mix of tenants. Yuppie puppy, a vet, a furrier, Customs and Border Protection, which we don't really talk about in terms of what they have there, but the requirement that would need, the bar that would need to be cleared to sprinkle their space, I can't even begin to think of what that would be. And a CrossFit space. It's a very unique mix of tenants, and I think that has to go into consideration for not only the building, the 7 criteria, but what the building consists of. It's a very unique building, and I think on that basis, it should be exempted. I don't know, did I answer your question?
Well, as I say, looking at the buildings,
Yeah.
I'm scratching my head and
Yeah.
saying, now how is this different
Yeah.
than Mr. Brown's? These folks sprinkled their building, and, it all seemed to work out.
Yeah.
And Mr. Brown would say that if they knew the exemption process existed, they'd probably be right here.
Well, could be, I don't,
Yeah.
and then the only other thing I would say is this list of conditions. The item number 1, I think that's just way off base. I mean, you have a fire exit or you don't have a fire exit. I mean, you can't put a gate in a fire exit. I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, if whatever you deem as necessary to do that, I think if you saw what this was, it
I
might.
have a sense of what it is, and I appreciate
Yeah,
that it's probably very easy to open and so on and so forth. But in the case of emergencies, smoke and so forth, people on both sides of it, I mean, an egress, exit, it has an egress door with egress hardware and, all of that stuff. And this clearly doesn't, and I just suggest that it shouldn't be there.
Okay, well, it wouldn't be that much different than an office door, you gotta go through your office door, but if that is a condition that be taken out, I'm sure we can make,
I mean, all it has to have is Panic hardware on it.
Well,
Yeah,
let me just
easily
describe
done.
what this thing is, because I spent a lot of time over there with Betsy the other day. And it's a panel that probably weighs 15 pounds. It's not a door.
Bob, I fully understand
And
what
it's,
you're saying.
I don't know, if I didn't try and push on it, if you, you push on it, there's no panic hardware, you don't need it, you just go through it. The other way, if you're coming the other way, you flip this little thingy, which would be the fireman coming in. But
Bob,
getting
I
out,
fully
no,
understand
I'm
what
just
you're
saying, getting out is not an issue, in my opinion.
Well, as I say, I think that.
we
as
can
a
easily
matter of
add,
precedence and so forth, to say that you can put something, whether it's a
Yeah.
gate or no
But
matter how insubstantial.
If you could leave the door
Exit,
we can
propped
easily
open at
put
night,
panic hardware on that door.
that's.
it's
that's the
not
end of
a door with a latch.
it. That's the end of it.
All right.
It could be left open all night long when I'm not, it can always be left open when I'm not.
Anything else, Art?
No, I think that's it, other than to say that you know, if we grant this waiver, what would we not grant a waiver to? Is there anything that makes this building so unique that we wouldn't, you know, there's a list of buildings to be sprinkled. How does this stand out from any of the others?
Okay. Neil?
I've got, first I've got some background information from my own experience. To my knowledge, Lake Bluff is the only nearby community that has a retroactive ordinance that requires fire sprinklers in existing buildings. In doing this, my feeling is that Lake Bluff went overboard. As far as I know, every other local community grandfathered the existing buildings. Highland Park, as an example, requires smoke alarms and sprinklers in buildings that are more than 50% altered or remodeled. However, at Fort Sheridan, they exempted very large historic buildings that were more than 50% altered and remodeled from sprinklers. But they did require a centrally monitored fire alarm system with more smoke detectors, probably about 50% more, than would have been required otherwise. So that's some of my background information that affected my decision. As far as the fire sprinkler exemption for this building, I agree that it's a high concern that a sprinkler head going off could severely damage or destroy the firs at McElroy Firs. I think that's a big concern. Next is that the occupancy of the building represent less of a fire hazard, significantly less, than the existing churches, and the churches are exempt. Next is the IBC does not require sprinklers in existing buildings unless they exceed the 50% rule. So because of these reasons, I'm going to vote in favor of an exemption subject to the following conditions, which are similar but not the same as what you've got listed. One is there should be one centrally monitored fire alarm system. Currently, there are two. Two is there should be more smoke detectors than would be otherwise required. Three is the system should have an alarm panel that indicates to the fire department the location of the smoke detector that sent the alarm. That way, when they arrive at the building, they look at the panel and they should be able to tell where to go from that. That's in lieu of having the signal lights that would be above each door, because if they have signal lights above each door, then they have to run around the building trying to find the light. So it's better to have the panel. Number four is that all exit doors should not be blocked either inside or outside. That speaks exactly to what you're talking about, Art. And number five is that all tenant spaces should have manual full state stations that are approved by the village, the number of them and the location. So that's it. That's my comments.
Matt?
We walk in here with preconceived notions of fairness to the community, fairness to the fire department, what we can leave here tonight feeling either righteous about or good or guilty. I feel for the tenants, but I don't feel for the building owner. So that's a tough one because he's been, this has been on the books since 2006, and we're at the last minute. We are on the Titanic, but we've seen this iceberg for 12 years. So that's my concern, is that, the spaces have been remodeled throughout the years. Maybe there could have been a plan to set up sprinkles within each one, and then by 2026, they're all connected, something like that. I don't want to punish the tenants for what I feel is a delay tactic to get to this point. And maybe it wasn't, but I do feel that we're under pressure, you're under pressure, and we're stuck here with this really awful decision that I don't want to see a firefighter get damaged or hurt or killed trying to either rescue puppies or put a fire out. I also don't want to see, and I truly believe that the tenants are representing what this would mean to their business. I don't think they'd come here telling us a different story. Hopefully, I don't think those are the people of Lake Bluff. So it is a tough one. I'm on the edge of one way or another, but those are my feelings. I do think that we are a little bit more stringent here. We also have a volunteer fire department that we cherish, and, you know, they deserve our, you know, what the village board has granted them in terms of this code issue. But it is imparting very harsh conditions on the tenants, especially these. We just have a collection of very unique tenants. And it's like they all gathered in one building, which maybe is good. Maybe this is one building that has these very unique tenants. It's not a clothing store, it's not a liquor store, that we could feel that maybe their plight is just as important as all the other plights that we're dealing with here. It's still, I would need 2 more months, and I don't think I would change, not knowing exactly where I am. But that's where I am right now.
Scott? You weren't here for the last go-round, but this is somewhat similar. You get the drift.
And there's been some great points made here tonight. I have a question. What is the current status of the 11 other buildings that are on this list? Have they agreed to put sprinklers in, or have they remained quiet, or what?
They've remained quiet. I mean, they're required to by January 1st, 2026, unless they come here for an exemption. You know?
Has anyone on this list agreed to put the sprinklers in yet, or?
You know, I don't know that they've.
Water district isn't built, not even there. The Commonwealth Edison building is nothing but switchgear. All switchgear. Dave, have you been in there? In the ComEd switch house?
With regard, questions of ComEd building?
The ComEd switch
Corner,
house there,
Green Bay?
yeah.
That building is substantial switchgear equipment. There's nothing in the building as far as an individual or occupancy where people would be doing any work. It's all massive switchgear and so forth. I will tell you, in front of everyone, that if ComEd comes in and asks for an exemption on that building, I would seriously consider it, because we'd be pouring water directly on a massive high-voltage electrical system. However, the way ComEd works with us on their other substations and so forth, I would anticipate that they will come with some type of fire protection system, as was mentioned by the other and so forth, whether it's some type of agent or whatever. But ComEd will come, I think, forth with some particular system protect. They have a major investment in the building.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
That does truly meet the requirement for a unique building.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But to answer your question, Scott, I think a lot of these, we have not heard from them for sure whether they're going to come here and apply for an exemption or whether they're going to sprinkler it, but they've got to do one or the other by January 1st, 2026, so
Okay.
less than 2 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's fair to assume that they're watching tonight.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely some unique things going on with this building, and it's great to hear from everybody tonight. I'm of the opinion that the answer lies somewhere in between a complete exemption and a complete sprinkler system. And maybe there's I don't know exactly how to vote on that, but maybe there's a compromise. I still think that this is potentially a great candidate for just a dry system where there's no water in the pipes, possibly as a compromise. I don't really see the need to sprinkler the fur vault, because if there's a fire event in the fur vault, the furs get ruined, but there's no people in there.
Dry system, it's using gas and it is
No
absorbing
matter what.
the hide of the skins.
Yeah.
Destroys them either also.
But if you were to loop around the vault with a system that put out a fire so that if there's a fire event in the system, it can't spread beyond the vault, And if there's a fire coming towards the vault, it would get put out before it reached it. So I don't know. I don't exactly know how to vote on that, but that's sort of where I'm at right now.
Sue?
Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, to the owner of Yuppie Puppy, that I just feel very relieved that you've taken steps to really obviously worked on that and worked with the fire. I mean, I think that's great. And I know we're talking about an ordinance, and I definitely am a rule follower, and I really feel like there are implications beyond just this building. But I can't help being swayed by the dogs. And I just think that and I think that in my mind makes a little bit of an exception, but probably not in the direction that everybody wants. Because I just feel like there's no question in my mind, after all the research I've done and been listening to everyone, that a sprinkler system is indeed safer, which is why they're required in new buildings. I'm kind of with Scott a little bit. I'm inclined to vote for the sprinkler system, just out of safety for all lives, human and canine and feline. But the fur situation and the numbers here about that loss of business if Mr. McElroy leaves, I don't know if there is some sort of thing that can happen with the vault and that one space being exempt. I don't know if that's possible or not, and the rest of the building being sprinkled. I don't know. But I'm kind of in that area as well, which is, if that's not a possibility, I'm inclined to say sprinklers are safer, and I just feel better, my conscience, that way. If there's a possibility of some kind of an exemption for the vault, I would be open to looking at that, or that would sway me in that exemption spot. I agree with the exemptions that Mr. Dahmer was talking about. I think those all sound really good and really well-informed. So I kind of would like to add those to the sprinklers. So that's kind of where I am.
I would make one more observation, and that's that a few years ago in one of our apartments, we had a lady that had a fire. She was in her bedroom. The fire started in the water heater closet, where the maid had taken a dust mop and put end dust on it and dusted the floor, and then put the mop in the closet and shut the door. Well, end dust is extremely flammable. It finally turned on fire. She didn't realize it for a while until the alarm went off. Then she walked out of her bedroom, and she's somewhat handicapped. And she looked at the water heater closet, saw that there was fire, could see a little smoke and a little bit of fire under the door. She went to the phone and called the fire department. And whoever answered the phones, she said, "There's a fire." And the person on the other end of the phone said, "We know there's a fire. They're on the way." And she said, "What should I do now?" And they said, "Get out of there." Being handicapped, she usually didn't go downstairs. That night, she made it down the stairs in record time. When the fire department got there, and as Chief Graff said, it probably from the time the fire started, they were probably 10 to 15 minutes to getting there. The fire had not gotten out of the closet. It was contained. They sprayed it. It was done, and I think it cost about $400 to put a new door on, and that was it. She was lucky. We've had other instances where, one other instance was at a building in Glencoe that didn't have an alarm system. It was an old building, and it didn't have fire sprinklers. A young woman with 2 children had put linens in a closet where there was a bare light bulb, and she piled them up so high that they fell over against the light bulb, and they ignited. She did everything that you could do that was wrong. She opened the door, and when she saw the fire, she panicked. She grabbed the kids, went out the door and left the door to her apartment open. Then she went out the outer door, which didn't have a closer on it, and she left that door open. The whole building ended up having all kinds of problems. Yet, had there been an alarm system there, that fire probably would have been contained to that one unit. Because the fire departments that we have here are very responsive. As Chief Graff said, he thinks that they could respond and be at the building within about 10 minutes. The ones that I've seen take about 15 minutes, so 10 minutes is better. So I think my personal feeling is that particularly in an older building, you need either an alarm system or a fire sprinkler system as minimums. And of course, we all talk about that we have a minimum code in a building. If you can do more than the minimum, that's wonderful. But in this particular instance with the FERS and some other things going on, I just don't think it's appropriate, so.
Okay, so let me preface by saying that I spent probably a couple of hours over there the other day. Let me just tell you what I found. First of all, in the Yuppie Puppy, when you go in the front, it's all pretty new and it's all 2x2 lay-in ceiling and very nice. There's reception, there's grooming room, there's private problem dog room, there's the office, and that's the front part. Then there's another space that is sort of a mystery space. I don't know what you call it, but behind that space, there's a 15-foot high drywall partition that is a soundproof, Betsy says it's a soundproof partition, 2 inches of drywall on metal studs. And it goes all the way up into including the flutes of the metal deck. So it's going to be a long time before any smoke goes from here to there, in my humble opinion. It's not a B-label door. There's some windows. It's a nice hollow metal door, but it's got windows. There's little doors down here for dogs to come and go in certain areas, but they're all hollow metal. So what I'm driving at is, yeah, if something burns, there's not a whole lot in there to burn anyway. But if something were to catch fire in there, it's going to be contained, in my opinion, for probably the better part of an hour before it reaches the dog side. The dog side, there's nothing in there to burn. There's synthetic floor of whatever it is, like we put in hospitals. Everything, the fencing is synthetic. There's glass doors and cages, and then it's all exposed steel studs. Bar joist ceilings. There's pull stations all over the place. There's, I think there's some strobe lights. There's a pull station right by the front door that just said the dogs could open. Anyway, so I kind of felt that, okay, this is not really a fire trap here. Then there is a loft, a partial loft above the office space. And I went up there and I said, now this doesn't look good. But again, it's a small spot. That's just storage of stuff, which doesn't look good. But below that is a very nice 2x2 lay-in ceiling. So I'm up there looking around thinking, how would I sprinkle this building? I practiced architecture for almost 50 years. I'm still anyway, that's beside the point. So it was hospitals, it was libraries, it was schools, lots of sprinkler stuff, retrofitting 16 stories of 3 DePaul University buildings. Anyway, so I know how sprinkler stuff works. So I'm thinking, how would I sprinkle this building? You got to come in from the street. On the other side of the street, I think, is where the main is. And then you're going to go probably to the farthest back wall. And you have a pump room, and you're going to go up. And now you're going to have probably an 8-inch run that's going to be your main that's going to run 300 and some feet. That is going to go through every space that's finished. I went to the doctor's vet space next door. Same thing, very nice space, high-techy, lots of fancy equipment and stuff. And right above there would be, okay, I've got to get that ceiling out of there so I can get up at 15 feet. The ceiling is up about, the bar joists are up about 15 feet. So you run the pipe through the bar, top of the bar joist, and you got scissors or scaffolding in every single one of these spaces to do that. I'm kind of describing, and I can see what the same thing in McElroy Firs. You could look in, and there's a nice little entryway, and that's where the ceiling is. Everything is disruptive. You get to the back, it's a piece of cake. But you have to get all your...
Except in my space.
Huh?
Except in my space.
Except, yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't, I've not been able to get in. You've been closed all the time. So anyway, my point is, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I'm guessing it's probably 6 to 8 weeks to do it. It's not a couple of days. Now, going back to Yuppie Puppy, Betsy showed me, she went through the whole routine of how she's invented, and it's pretty good. I think she's gonna have those dogs out of there. If anybody's there, she's, 3 minutes away from lives 3 minutes away from the place. But she's got these slip things that you put over their head, and then you hook them onto this thing and then take them over to Rick Manguso's place. It's pretty good. I think they'd be gone before the firemen would get there, if you had staff that would come down and help you. Anyway, judging from all the other things that the criteria, I think that maybe Lake Bluff is just a little bit over the edge compared to all of our other communities around us. And I have the ultimate faith in our fire department to be able to get there in time. I don't know about if the lights over the doors instead of a annunciator panel is the way to go, but those are details. But I'm inclined to say, there's the kind of the bureaucratic stuff that we write on paper and becomes laws. And then there's the other side of what's the real world? What's the practical way to do this? And without putting, in my opinion, life and limb, because there's not that many people in the building. How many people did you have in there? About 15, maybe?
7 to 8 on a shift,
Yeah.
max, maybe.
And most of them seem to be trimming the dogs at the time.
Well, yeah, there's 3 in the group.
Yeah.
Room 4, 2 in front, 2 in the back, 7 to 8.
And the vet office is like very slow.
5 to 6.
And that's pretty interesting just to go in there. This is if you've ever seen a walking water tank for physical therapy of a dog that holds 200 gallons, it's pretty cool. Anyway, you've got most of that is in the back. You got more space in the back, which is easy. It's the area that you have to do the most heaviest work in. That's over the occupied area that's office space or, really functioning space that is very hard to disrupt. So my inclination is to go with the exemption, and but that's just me. So now, are we ready to have any more discussion?
I'll make a motion if you want.
Huh?
You want a motion?
Oh, I want to know if anybody else wants to have anything else to say.
The one question I'd have, Bob, is, listening to what you're saying about this building, if you look at the buildings that are still unsprinkled, any of those buildings don't appear to be is there any reason to think any of those other buildings aren't in the, don't have the same issues as this
I don't know, but there's another thing that I just thought to mention is that, okay, the Yuppie Puppy's been in there for 20-plus years.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. McElroy Furs, you said, has been in there for 29 years. The attorney's office, the vet office has just moved in, and so that's only 5 years. But it's 5 years of, I mean, it's 5 years of very specialized animal treatment there. The attorney's office, I have no idea. And the Secret Service or whatever they are back there in the back, they're a mystery.
Like 11 years.
They're 11 years, but nobody's ever been there. And then there's yeah. So anyway, I can see a great deal of difficulty in trying to sprinkle this building. Not impossible, but enormously expensive. And you guys that are architects have seen sprinklers go in, and whoever was describing it, maybe it was Ted, a lot of oil on the ground, a lot of grinding, a lot of, sometimes welding, trying to anchor the piping up there, on scissors. It's going to be a horrendous undertaking. And I'm not even talking about the cost of it.
One last thing is, if we approve the waiver, are we not doing a disservice to those that have already installed the sprinklers?
Let me ask, maybe this is not a good answer, but they never came in and asked for an exemption.
Well, they couldn't ask for
Well, that's true, they couldn't have.
it, and they had deadlines.
And
that
they
some
had
of them
deadlines,
complied with.
but you know what? Most of those buildings were pretty generic.
If you've driven around,
Yeah.
there's just a whole gambit, and as I say, the one on Sherwood Drive sure doesn't seem any much.
I don't know which one that is.
Uh,
Don't tell me the number, because it won't mean anything.
Well, it's a series of single-story,
It's two
all
buildings,
broken up to, it's two different addresses, but I'm not sure that it's two different buildings. But all broken up into individual tenant spaces, all one story.
Oh, that one,
It's over close to 41.
with the greenhouses.
It's got the greenhouses,
Yeah.
yes.
I think it is two buildings, and they're all offices.
Well, I saw one that looked like it was some kind of an art gallery kind of thing.
They've always
or
got
something
a
along
sign
those
up.
lines. But my point is that at some point in time, these folks decided to sprinkle the buildings. I have no idea why. Maybe the building was 70% vacant, and they said, now's the time to do it. On the other hand, maybe they said, gee, we're gonna have to do that 2 years' time, let's do it now. I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
what the situation was, but nevertheless, they did it. And, it's not like Mr. Brown bought the building a week ago and now has to confront this issue. That's all. I'm just saying, asking a matter of fairness.
Yeah. Did you have something to say?
No, I'm ready to make a
Okay.
motion.
Anybody else? Should we call for a vote on this? Or you want to have any more discussion? We gotta get off the dime here. We continued this from last month, and,
I have a question. Is it possible to grant exemptions to existing tenants without granting an exemption to the entire building?
Yeah, you could grant a partial exemption, so you could grant it for, a room, the first storage room, or a tenant space, or, that's within the power of the board to grant partial exemptions.
the flaw is the installation of the system. It would be great if the water main was behind the building. And then you could run in, do your big stuff in the back, where most of these places, it's open. And then run your smaller pipe. And we do your drops down instead of the opposite way.
But if it were a dry system, you wouldn't have to connect it to the sewer main,
The water main.
the water main, rather.
Right.
I think when we had the discussion with Seth, he wasn't recommending a dry system, or it takes a while for a dry system to fill up.
So, well, there's
Yeah.
different things that different people mean by dry
Yeah.
systems. I think what Scott is talking about is one that's not even connected and depending on the fire department to come through the fire department connection and
You just
and
come and hook
provide
up
water, so
the hose
nothing
to the
happens, you know, until the fire department arrives and hooks up the line and,
Oh, so everybody's got
Provides
an
water.
independent, like, they've got a standpipe outside.
Correct.
yeah, essentially, yeah, it's not like a dry system where it's pressurized air, you know, you can prevent freezing with that, but the automatic systems, of course, are more expensive. But the downside of the dry system like Scott's talking about is then nothing happens for all the time the fire department is arriving and getting set up.
That's-
You know, as we
yeah.
talked about. You lose all that time, which was
Yeah,
a big part of the
Yeah.
benefit, of course, of the automatic system.
want to make your motion?
Yeah, I move that we grant an exemption to this building regarding the fire sprinkler ordinance, subject to the 5 conditions that I mentioned earlier. And Mike, I'll give you a copy of this if it's approved.
Okay.
Any seconds? No seconds?
I know it's hard to second. I'm gonna second, see where the vote goes.
Okay.
So I'll
But
second.
I can't do it, so.
Yep.
All right, this is gonna be a roll call.
Okay. Member Cottrell,
Nay.
Member Dahlman,
Aye.
Member Kerouac,
I'm gonna go aye.
Member Stradiff,
Aye.
and Member Wicks.
Nay,
What was that?
nay.
And then Chair Hunter, so you're
Oh, guess. Aye.
aye. So then that was 4 ayes?
That's 4-2. And that was in the approved. That would be for approving the exemption with the 5 conditions.
Yep. Okay.
Oh,
So the exemption is approved with the 5 conditions.
Yeah. Can we read those into the record? These 5?
did we eliminate the lights over the doors?
Oh, the motion was for the conditions by member. I can read them for the record, just so everyone is clear. So it was, there should be 1 centrally monitored fire alarm system. There should be more smoke detectors than would otherwise be required. The system should have an alarm panel that indicates to the fire department the location of the smoke detector that sent an alarm. All exit doors should not be blocked, either inside or outside, and all tenant spaces should have manual pull stations.
And this was a motion to direct staff to grant the draft
Yes,
the
we-
resolution. as we
Yes,
said.
so we would draft a resolution approving the exemption with these 5 conditions.
And just out of a clarification as well, how does this, maybe that this can be clear in the resolution, how this relates to the other requirements under the code and other triggers in the future? Or there's different circumstances with different tenants? I guess there's clarity, looking for that as well.
Yeah, we can make that clear in
Yeah.
the resolution.
Well, I think
yeah.
if there's the 5 or 6 criteria, the first one was difficulty. Or however it was, you wrote it.
Well, you're talking about a different set
I
of
think we're talking about
criteria
different,
than-
I think the village administrator is talking about if new tenants occupied the building, if
Okay.
there were, if there was new construction that did follow the IBC. Is that what you were, am I correct in that understanding? So, change in circumstances, I would say,
Right.
if any of those events triggered the automatic fire sprinkler exemption.
Do you just want my condition? Do you just want my condition to be IBC compliance?
If you want to clarify that you would be, as the applicant to clarify that's what you're satisfied with, I think that can get clarified, that can be, maybe, I don't know if there's further discussion now before the resolution is redrafted, just if there's clarity from the ABR, but you're certainly,
The-
Is the number 5 was the building shall be sprinkler if required under the criteria of the International Building Code for existing structures. So I think that's, or is that where we're?
That's one of them, but it could be other tenants or,
That's not what we were just saying if it follows the
No, that's.
The
that's all
board can
covered by
decide,
that.
right,
That's all covered under the IBC.
okay.
But that's the 50% rule.
Well,
Your
that's one of
number
the
5 was
criteria.
not in the motion.
Yeah, no, it was not.
It was not, so if we'd like to make, I don't know if the board was clear, we can do another vote with additional conditions or these conditions, added conditions.
I mean, it is required by our ordinances anyway, it's just
To-
making it clear. that
Yeah,
we
in the
did-
re- in
that
the
we did
resolution.
grant an exemption to the IBC criteria, you know.
Yeah,
And so it's just
it,
essentially clarifying something that's already true.
that is already in the code,
Yeah,
right,
Right,
right. This is already in the code,
yeah, right.
the
But
applicant's
we could
condition.
add it in for additional clarity if we want to.
So if a new tenant occupies the building, that space needs to be sprinklered?
Yeah, only if it's a higher
Higher
occupancy
occupancy.
level, like an assembly use or something like that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you clarify what?
So if they go from like a business use to an assembly use, if there's a change of occupancy to a higher occupancy classification under the IBC, then the IBC says to install sprinklers for that.
Throughout the building.
I would have to check whether it's throughout the building or just that tenant space. And I'd have to check whether there's the caveat in the IBC, as I know there is for the 50%, about the water service size, you know, which essentially renders that null and void.
What if the service isn't capable of supporting it?
Right, because I know that's a criteria for the 50% remodel under the IBC, which, you know, effectively makes that criteria ineffective. I'm not sure if it is for the, it may not, I'm not sure if it is for the upgrade of occupancy. But anyway, all that's already in the code, whatever it says.
Whatever that means.
So, are we kind of done?
Can we just compare what the proposed conditions, I think that was discussed, just so we're not missing something that maybe, and do we want to hear from Chief Graff if he has any other conditions that would help their situation out
You can ask them.
that we haven't? Chief Graff, would you be interested in weighing in on conditions for this approval from the fire department side?
No, sir.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to, it's your only, I don't know if you want to hand this down, if you want to see the conditions that I just read, but it might be helpful if members want to.
And number 3 is a maybe?
Yeah, I don't think, yeah.
So I have a lot of experience in talking with him about these things.
I think it's pretty much duplication.
They are very similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well,
Did we want to add, is there, I just want to make clear, do we need to add any other additional conditions from the ones that member Coleman had?
you know,
They were different than the,
yeah, no, I don't think we
applicants
need to
proposed.
amend
Okay.
anything.
okay. Staff will prepare a new resolution for the board's
Right.
approval at the next meeting.
Right, yes,
Great.
right. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Yep.
I want to, Ted? I guess I can't talk to him about that.
Well, we do have another item on our agenda.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Sure. Thank you, Seth.
Okay.
The rough crowd.
Hello. Yeah, no. I was gonna say we need to get some
Huh?
more
Isn't it
comfortable
fun to watch?
Heard it's more fun to review drawings.
I was not here last time.
Mike?
Is this the design?
Yeah,
Yes.
oh, I'll take one.
Do you want me, I just wanted you to, do you want me to take that and revise I'll prepare a new resolution to send to you?
Yeah, or I could scan this and email it to you in the morning, is that okay? Yeah, okay. I'll
You
do
know,
that.
you
Yep.
gotta, where you live downtown. I know.
Downtown.
That's your friend, yeah.
What you say?
Go away.
Oh, I'm just done.
Okay, next on the agenda is the,
I'm okay with that.
We don't get anything out of it.
Thank you, guys.
next on the agenda is the Tesla supercharger station in the Target parking lot. And you're ready to roll.
I am
see
ready.
You just gave us some more stuff.
Yes, this is just what I'm going to go through this afternoon. It's just supplemental to the packet that I think you received recently with the updated drawing. But just a real quick introduction. My name is Mike Levitt. I'm a senior project developer with Tesla, Midwest Supercharging Group. And I have our designer here, Irina, who you met at the last meeting. She's our designer, and we have the design lead, Ashley. She is here for support. And we have our project development lead, Jordan, here as well. So, as we discussed last time, we're proposing to put a 16-post supercharger station at Target's parking lot. And the last time that we were here, there was just some discussion on location and aesthetics of the site. And the board asked that we go back and look at some alternate locations on properties south of where we were proposing. So we went back and we met as a team and kept an open mind to see if we can relocate the site in one of the 3 alternate locations that you see on page 2. And in summary, we decided that the best location for us to have the supercharging station is at the originally proposed site, which is shown on the next page. So our previous layout that we proposed the last time we were here, there were some concerns and comments about the transformer and the equipment being close to what I'm going to call the service road. I don't think it has a name, but the service road and the intersection of the drive aisle. So we went back and proposed the new layout, which is on the next page, which includes an increased landscape island with some landscape to help screen some of our equipment from that service road. We moved everything to the west by 2 stalls in order to keep it away from the service road as well. The existing trees will remain. I know that was a concern that the team had, was removing landscape. And this area is one of the areas that, or is the area, excuse me, that Target approved on site for us to build our EV charging stations. So just looking at the next page with the 3 alternate locations, so just so you know that we did take them into consideration. We have alternate location 1, and the reason that we could not build there is that there is the underground storm line, and it just nixed that location altogether. It'd just be way too expensive for us to build on top of that storm line or to remove the storm line. Alternate location number 2, we couldn't build in that area because there is an existing utility easement in the way, and that will cause us to have to shrink the size of the site. And then in that case, we would not be providing the number of charge stations that we need in order to provide charging for the community. And we will also need to put in a spline down the center of that stall line, which would cause some pooling in the area. And then the third location that you guys asked us to review was at the very south end of the parking lot. And if we go there, we will have to increase our utility easement for our primary run from where we plan on connecting the power to bring power to the site, which would be very costly. And Target will not approve that location just because we will encumber more of the property with an easement. We'll have to do some additional studies of water management within that area, because as of now, that area is sort of like a water retention area down in that location, and there's a riprap area and everything else that we will have to redesign and reevaluate. So it'll be very costly for us to move that as well. So we are proposing that we stay in the original location, and I think you guys have a layout of the new design, which we took some of your considerations the last time we were here in order to screen the site and move the equipment away from that intersection. Comments, questions?
Sue, started your end.
Okay, so on alternate two, when you're talking about the utility easement, it looks like it might be at the tail end of that space there, which is why it's shorter. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so if you go to the next page, where it's highlighted, a couple more, where we have the three options highlighted, alternate one and alternate two. There's a yellow section that is highlighted within our section. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I'm getting there. Here?
Yep, alternate two.
Okay.
If we were to place the site there, we will have to sit our equipment over top of an easement, and we cannot put our equipment on top of over an easement.
And is the easement that
That-
brown?
Right, yeah, so I highlighted the easement on the.
Are you sure that's a current easement, or is that a vacated easement from the old Shepherd Chevrolet building that's gone?
Yeah, it is showing on our survey as a current easement, but we could get that verified.
Because I see old lot line, it's parallel to an old lot line there. And that seems to made up with the old street cul-de-sac line to the south. It looks like all old stuff from the old subdivision plat from pre-Shepherd Chevrolet days.
Yep.
Okay, so that was one question. And then on the alternate number 3 spot, what does it mean, what does encumbering property mean?
Yeah, so we will have to get an easement from the connect point all the way down to that southern parcel line. So we will encumber their property with an easement, much longer easement.
Target's property?
Target's property, right.
And would they not allow that, or if they're?
Yeah, so
your partner?
we've gone back to them and asked if they would approve us to move the site south to one of these locations. And as of now, they said, no, we've done our studies internally. When it comes to traffic flow and everything else, this is the location that we will approve you guys to go in.
So they said for alternate number 3, they would not approve that
We will not get approval to go in that location.
because of the property encumbrance, right?
Well,
Because of the
there-
easement.
Easement is one. They didn't give us more detail on that. Typically, we just submit to them our options on the property. And sometimes they tell us, no, it's too close to the front door, or, they give us the reasons for not going to a certain location. But we told them that we've had this meeting, we reviewed the sites, and when we asked, if we could go in these areas, they just said, no, those areas we rejected, please stay within the approved area that we approved.
I'm not sure I understand which one is the easement. This one drawing shows a gray section here. Is that
Yeah,
the
I'm sorry if I
easement?
didn't make that clear. Yes, he was right. Yes, that's correct.
But doesn't the easement also go through the original location?
No, so if you look at the drawing, our site, the easement's on the very end. We do not have any equipment crossing that easement.
Well, unless I don't understand it.
Okay. Do you guys have
This
the new
drawing
drawing?
shows the easement.
Is the new drawing?
Yeah, if you have the full, I think you have the full CDs. Did we send the full CDs?
Yeah, we have these
If
full
you look
sets.
on page, let's see if I printed that page. Okay. So if you see page C101. Actually, we'll show it.
Oh, it's just on the other side of it? Yes. Okay, I was looking at this, yeah.
So we just miss it.
Right, we do not cross the easement.
Alternate 1. So alternate 1 was a storm line. Alternate 2 may be a utility easement, or it could be old. We're not sure. And then alternate 3 is a longer easement.
Longer utility easement, the water management plan in that area, because all of the water sort of drains towards that location. So we will have to do,
kind of drainage,
What's that?
some sort of drainage.
Yeah, we'll have to do some additional studies to figure out exactly what we need to do to redesign that drainage area,
Which
which
could
would be a
also,
significant cost. Go ahead.
yes, and it could also cause regrading behind that whole area, which could cause and lead to redesigning basically a lot of this area's storm management system in general, which means underground storm lines, inlets, and all of that. Which is why we would need that study and.
I just had another, just a kind of unrelated question to the easements and all of that, which was if, who maintains, if you plant like the junipers or, you know, the stuff, who maintains that? Is that Target? Or who?
Yeah.
Tie into their existing irrigation system typically, and then that's part of our agreement with them. If we install landscaping, they'll continue to maintain it.
Okay.
And maintain the rest of their property.
And to just expand on that a little bit, part of the requirements from a construction perspective, the contractors are required as part of their scope of work, if there's any landscaping being placed, they are required to submit a watering plan for the first growing season to also help with the establishment of the plants.
If you could maybe hand the portable mic to people who aren't near the microphone so we can, you know, capture it for the audience and recording and all that too.
I did have one more question, on the original location, which, is that, if we plant something there, I just wanna say, I'm not for that location anyway, but if we did plant something there, does that obstruct anybody's view or anybody's safety driving around there in any way?
No, so you
know what I mean?
Right, yep. So we would definitely verify the line of sight to see exactly how far we need to put the landscape. But you currently have 2 trees there, so whenever someone pulls up, they still have to look around those 2 before they enter into the
No, it's a
intersection.
tree trunk.
Yeah. I think, which is true, but I think just like a tree trunk would be certainly different than like a big screen, basically, which, because, you know what I mean? Okay, but I think that's it for my questions.
Scott?
I don't have any questions.
Are you saying that Target said no to all 3 alternatives, or just a third one, and the other ones had conditions why we felt they didn't work?
Right, yeah, no, we spoke with Target.
Yep.
And we asked them, you know, if this is the best location on property for us to go. And they said, yes, this is the location that we will approve. We asked if we can move south anywhere. They did mention that row that has the storm drain, but once we pointed that out, they said, yeah, okay, fine. You guys could stay where you are, and the other areas were not approved.
So then for us, are we evaluating this on what basis? Like, what's their criteria?
Supposed to evaluate it on, which is the aesthetics.
On the
of it.
aesthetics, right?
Right,
Right.
Not anything else.
not
Just
anything else.
all the things we worked hard for.
All the things we worked hard for. I know where you're going.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's our criteria, and it's not anything else. Okay. And do we know if the village wants this? Is this anything to do with the village, or this is a private company meeting with another private company?
Right, it's
and we're-
private companies.
We have nothing
yeah.
to do with it, we're not, so it's not a plus to the community in any way?
I mean, not in any hidden way, but I mean, of course, you know, it's nice to have
Some chargers.
infrastructure for electrical cars
I get all that,
in the
right.
community, I
Sure,
suppose.
that I get, right,
Yeah.
secondary things, but not, that's not our concern. Our concern is solely on the aesthetics and the site plan. Is that,
Right, yeah.
okay,
So I have a question. If it turns out that, I'm sorry, am I talking out of turn again?
always.
I know. I can wait.
Oh, go ahead.
So what are you gonna say?
Yeah. Oh, I was.
Well, I was just, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that Target put a foot down, because I think they picked the worst spot to put it in. Because that easement has to be an abandoned easement. It's an old,
It looks like it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I could see alternate 2 working, just, if anything works,
agree.
alternate 2 would be the one.
I would agree.
What is your objection to the proposed location, just out of curiosity?
Well, it's just, we worked for months on creating a very pretty Target and very sensitive to all the citizens in our community of providing, a pretty big store for us, for a small town. And in Highland Park, these things get hidden, and it's just our little community, they're imposing something, unsightly, that we would never approve, just as if someone said, I need to put up power or something, we would say, no, we would fight this tooth and nail. So I'm basing it on that, not on secondary issues, just on what we're charged with. No pun intended.
So just the aesthetic of the charging station?
That's why we're here. We're not here for any other reason besides,
The charging stations are one thing.
Yeah.
It's the transformers.
yeah, they're very
and all
handsome
the,
charging stations.
so, other appurtenances that go along with them.
Yeah.
It's out in your face. Charging stations, you gotta learn to live with. They're not bad. They're fine.
Yeah.
They look like the cars.
It's-
When they-
Can the transformers be put somewhere else, or do they have to be right next to the stations?
It needs to be close to
Yeah.
to the site.
Let me make a comment. I'm not gonna wait
I'm done.
till my turn, because I
Tag
went
team.
down to Highland Park.
Yep.
Highland Park has got how many stations?
I did not build.
8, I think.
8.
No, there's more than that.
Oh, are there?
12.
12.
Yeah, and there's 12 stations, and then there's also maybe 4 or 5 non-target stations that just continue on. But all the equipment is in a box. It's in a concrete block, pretty nice, actually, very dark toned block, and these things have gotta be 9 or 10 feet tall. And so it's a box in a different row. And it's like, okay, it's a box, you probably think it's a giant trash container.
Yep.
But you don't see any of the equipment. It would be too big a box to put right here.
Yep.
But I'll stop. It's not, I'll let Neil go on.
I agree with you about Highland Park. You don't
It's
tend
on
to
the edge.
notice all this equipment.
Well, it's on the edge of the parking lot.
Yeah, it's
The
off to the
farther
side.
west edge, it's
I
kind
mean,
of
you
like,
can see it if you're driving on the highway. If you look for it, you can find it. But most of the times, you don't even see it as you go by. And when you're in the parking lot at Target, you don't, in Highland Park, you just don't tend to even know that
it's
it's
a
there.
it's a big parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's chaos there.
It's chaos there.
I
Stop
hate
signs
going
and
there
stuff.
because of the chaos there. I do. I love our little simple world.
But I would prefer to see something.
go west of
Hit that bubble and I
Waukegan Road.
bounce off.
Like you just mentioned, it would be nice to have something around it so that you couldn't see all this stuff.
The trouble is, it's so huge.
Yeah, it is. It's
I mean,
gigantic.
I could not reach the top of it, and
Yeah.
I could reach 8 feet.
And it's right where you drive in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you drive through that, and I did it twice today, it's like, of all the islands,
Right.
that's the nicest one.
Same.
Yeah, yeah.
The best trees is directly across from,
Yep.
Right when you, yeah,
Meatheads, whatever it's called now.
yeah. Epic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Epic Burger.
What if you were to flip it?
We asked that.
Can't do it?
I don't know.
We
asked
asked them to
that.
do that. They said they couldn't
Where it would be
turn.
more, they would be more in the middle of the
Yeah, because
parking
their
lot.
route is coming here, and then they'd have to go that way, they said.
Yeah, I think, when we were talking about flipping it, when it comes to the primary power that would come from all the way north of the lot, we would have to basically cross to the transformers. We would have to go from north down and then cross over west, which would kind of interfere with all of our runs that have to do with the conduit runs from then each cabinet back to each post. And we can't really install any other secondary conduits within what would be a common easement at that point, because we would have to go west to the transformer.
You have to go back.
Yeah, then we'd have
And
to
then-
go back, yes, exactly.
I have a question. So if it turns out that this on alternate 2 is an old easement from an old plan, and it really isn't a problem, would Target reconsider? I mean, if it was between we don't want any charging station? If it was like, no, we won't approve it there, would they, and that wasn't an easement, would they consider alternate two, do you think? Or is it,
Yeah.
can we go back to them with that and say,
I mean,
hey?
I can always go back.
You know,
But
we got a big hammer here.
We do have a big camera.
Yeah.
I know.
We don't have to, you know,
I had just one question.
go ahead. Yeah,
I'm looking at the elevation, I'm looking on C201. And it says here, the supercharger cabinet. Now, I'm scaling it, that thing looks like it's about 8 feet tall.
It's tall.
it's at least 8 feet tall.
You don't have to actually dimension, but scaling.
Yeah,
Here.
it's,
It's more than 6 feet if you draw
Well, the ones that I saw today were more than 6 feet.
Here, I ripped off the scale.
The supercharger cabinets are approximately around 7.5 foot tall, above grade. So wherever that.
Is that the
top
main
of-
transformer? Because that's bigger.
No,
Oh.
transformer is much smaller.
Yeah, the transformer will be,
like 4 feet.
yeah, about probably 4 foot off the ground from top of grade.
Why are the ones that inside that box, I could look at the door sides, seem to be so much taller than that? I could not reach the top of the wall,
Yeah.
and they seem to come up that far. Then I can reach 8 feet.
So the supercharger cabinet that we have now, our current version of equipment,
Yeah.
is a newer version than what you guys have seen at Highland Park. So it is a little bit shorter in height, but there's a lot of components, cooling fans, and what we call PEMS, but it helps talk back to the chargers, and then also has components that allow us to monitor the system remotely. So there's a lot of different components, and also we're running a lot of terminations in there for our AC and DC runs. So there's a fairly nice section in each of those cabinets in order to allow for electricians to land those conductors.
So in Highland Park, I assume that you didn't participate in the other charging stations that are right in the same line. They're just going north from where yours are.
The non-Tesla ones.
Yeah, they're not,
Yeah, those are what would be called a level 2 charging station. So we installed those as part of an old program with Target. The Tesla supercharger station we're proposing today will be compatible with all electric vehicles. When we were building that site in Highland Park about 4 years ago, that was not the case. The Tesla equipment was exclusive to Tesla branded cars. So as part of our deal with Target, we would install some universal chargers. But we no longer have to do that. It's no longer a requirement since the site will serve all vehicles.
okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I'm going way off topic here, but you say it'll serve all cars. Can I plug my ID4 and,
Yeah, so Volkswagen, along with all other major OEMs in North America, have announced they're moving to the Tesla charging standard. So it's up to Volkswagen, but they'll be able to provide you an adapter for your existing EV. And then starting in 2025 or 2026, TBD, those vehicles, Volkswagen will start equipping their cars with the Tesla plug standard.
You got one of those?
yeah,
Wow.
it's neat.
Yeah, just so the board knows, about 10% of all new car sales in 2023 were fully electric cars. So you'll certainly start seeing more and more of them in Lake Bluff.
Okay, what are we thinking here?
Is it possible to take, I can see some impracticalities, but is it possible to recess thing partly on the ground so it doesn't stick up so high?
Then you
Like
have to
about 2
pump 'em
feet
out.
down? And then pour water in it?
Is that no? Is that gonna be a no?
I think to meet code, our equipment has to be installed at grade. Yeah, we're not able to build in.
Yeah, we would have some water ingress concerns.
Yeah.
It would definitely,
You'd have to put a
Create
sump
some-
up in there, just like you do in an elevator pit, really.
yeah, that is something that we have not done to date that I'm aware of on any sites for the charging cabinets themselves.
Yeah. I guess the only comment I would have about this is these cabinets are so tall
Yeah.
that you're not going, be able to hide those with landscaping.
No.
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 I think that's probably self-evident to everybody else. The comments transformer, yeah, reasonable sized shrub could have covered that, but.
Is it a comment transformer? It didn't look like it.
Sorry?
So the comment transformer the transformer that I saw down there didn't look like a comment transformer. Was it? Everything is sort of silver.
At Highland Park?
Yeah.
Yes, there should be a big green transformer. I think Highland Park is part of the ComEd distribution territory. I'd have to double check that.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah.
It is. Yeah, they are.
And just a note about the landscape we're proposing, yeah, it won't fully screen the equipment from view. The idea is to kind of soften the effect. You know, at Highland Park, like you noted, the enclosure is huge and in fact increases the amount of interference you might create with sightlines, if that's a concern. So we're trying to, of course, find a way to meet any request while also building a site in the area that's approved and also at an amenity we like, in a community we like. So we're trying to thread the needle here a bit. So just appreciate any grace we can get from the board to bring this amenity to the community.
Well, can I mean, is it possible, I'd like to know, could you, I know we're asking you to come back or do more work or whatever, but
We like work.
could you guys, do you want to come, well, the sprinkler thing's done, so you wouldn't have to sit through that. I would like to know if that indeed is an old easement, and if Target, if it is, if Target would consider alternate two.
Right.
Just
So,
based,
yeah, so I've gone back, I've asked Target about alternate two. They didn't even know about the easement. We just said, are we okay with this location? So it would just, I mean, I'm okay with going back and asking them again.
Yeah.
Say, hey, we met the board. They really would like us to move here. Are you okay with it or not?
Yeah.
And then it's just up to them whether they say yes or no.
okay.
But I guess my question is, if they say no, are you guys okay with the existing location?
I'm not, but that's just me. I mean, I'd like to more or less force their hand, I suppose, and just say, we'd rather have two. Would you rather have two, or?
The simplest thing is just to deny this and see what they come back with. It will
Yeah.
force their hand to.
Right. I mean, I
You
feel
don't have to
bad.
ask.
I feel bad, but I just feel like it really is it's so huge, and it is right when you drive in, and I just kind of feel like
Yeah.
moving it over would just accomplish getting it there. It's not much farther for people to drive. It would just look a whole lot better, and I think it would just be a good compromise, personally.
Yeah, and we can, Mike and I can evaluate that with Target and see if that's an option. I just want to also kind of ask the board for the opinion. For the context of the property, we understand the site is big. It's real infrastructure that'll support, thousands of customers monthly charging electric cars, which we think is a good thing. In the context of the property, though, it's at a Target. We're directly across the street. There's some restaurants. Those are probably 20 to 25 foot tall buildings. The Target building itself is quite large. So the scale of our equipment and proposal doesn't actually seem to impact the total view impact, viewscape, whatever you want to call it, of the property. So I just want to ask, is there a particular piece of the puzzle here that we're not seeing? Just want to make sure that we're understanding the concern fully, so we can address with Target, other stakeholders we have, our budget team.
Yeah,
There's
so,
a lot of
right.
folks to make
I think what you find beautiful, which are your charging stations, and, because I would if I was you, right? We find it doesn't add to, what we're trying to do is not create a blight on the community. And that's what this would do. It's that simple. You're just putting these huge, chargers and generators, big pieces of equipment, just in the middle of a parking lot that we worked very hard to make as pretty as possible for the community. Our goal is to protect the community from eyesores, whatever that is. And, if there's no good way to hide it or move where it's not the main focal point of and it's not a service road, that's it looks like it, but it's a main road that people use to get in and out.
It's a busy area.
It's a busy road, yeah. So that's the problem.
It is a main road.
It's a main
I
road.
mean, it's a street.
Yeah, so it's,
And I'm sorry, I just called it a service road 'cause I didn't see a name.
no,
for it,
I wasn't,
so
right, I
it was
wasn't
just-
knowing
that's
that
what
you
it-
weren't being,
Yeah.
anything. I just want to explain to us that's, it's a main road, it connects.
So-
And we're trying to create the best environment for the community, that's all. And it's, we're trying to find the best way to do that in every option.
What if we started doing, and they don't have to be 9 feet tall,
Yeah, just
just
some.
some screen walls, just to kind of give you some relief before the other things?
Are there any newer installations that we could look at in the area?
The closest one is Waukegan. Yeah,
that-
so when I
that has
called
these,
prior-
that has this exact equipment?
It's actually a larger site than what we're
Yeah.
proposing here.
Right.
Does it have more components or,
Yes, it's a 20 stall site. We're proposing, I think, what, 16?
but are but like the,
Same exact sizing, yeah.
same,
Sorry, I
Yeah,
should,
no,
sorry, the
the
charge
V4.
post will be new, so you have an accurate elevation showing the charge post that'll be installed. The cabinets will be the same, the large boxes, the white boxes that.
right, so the one in Waukegan has the general, all that stuff is what you're showing here. Maybe the charging stations are a little bit different.
Charging stations are
Yeah.
slightly
Oh,
different.
is
but I
it
think-
already built?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Where's that?
Waukegan, it's at the new casino, or across the street from Walmart. I can send you the address.
yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned it to the person I called to schedule to see if we could all get together and go visit that site, but he said
Yeah.
it was gonna be impossible. But, if you guys are available, we'd love to meet with you on
Right
site, 'cause we
at
could
the
show
casino,
you.
or is it by Big Ed's, or?
So there's, a Buffalo Wild Wings, and then the new, casino that was just built
Big
in
tent,
Waukegan.
right.
Yeah, it's the big tent. In their parking lot, we have a 20 stall site, plus, I think we have 6 level 2s as well, at that location. But the charge cabinet, to his point, they're the same charge cabinets, just the charge posts themselves, because we have new posts now, will look a little bit different, but you have what they look like in the.
Transformer and all the big things.
All
are the
that's there.
same, and you're saying they're only 6 feet tall now, or roughly, opposed to 8 or 9?
Yeah, and just to be clear, the cabinets are 6 feet or taller. The transformer is still a ComEd transformer that's around 4 feet, a little bit over
Yeah,
4 feet
they're
tall.
just green and ugly.
Green and ugly.
The other nearest site is Buffalo Grove, Illinois, the Woodman's, there's 12.
Waukegan's closer.
No, we can't go there, right, as a group, because that's a
Well,
open meeting thing?
if we wanted to have more than 3 people there at the same time, we'd have to publish a meeting notice that we're meeting there. But if you
That's a-
go individually and look at
ever
it,
go
you
to
can
Big
do
Ed's?
that anytime.
Well, we always go to the casino, but we don't go more than 3 of us at a time. That's the issue.
Just
So
go to
I
Big
would,
Ed's.
I mean,
Plus parking lot.
yeah, before we lay the hammer down, I might, that might be,
I think we should see it.
because it's not, from our point of view, it's not, our goal is different than your goal and Target's goal. And I gotta abide by what our goal is. So if we could see that and maybe,
What, even if you could see it, let's say they're 6 feet tall and 5 feet tall.
yeah,
Would it be out of line to put some sort of a screen wall that's
Yeah.
one of the materials that's on the Target building?
Yeah.
And then put some landscaping in front of it?
yeah, and I think that's what.
Let it hang out there all
Yeah,
night.
I think, right. What I don't want to do is approve something and then drive up someday and say,
What was I?
I mean, we can picture a lot of things. I can't picture I can picture a building. And I just don't want someday to drive down and say, we didn't have all the information in front of us.
Just a
maybe
couple other things we'd certainly
4-foot walls
like
or
to
something.
offer. We're
Yeah.
happy
I'm
to
just
provide
thinking about
proposed
sight
items,
lines on the
and
corner, you're
we-
probably
we've
fine,
built
though.
about 2,100
Yeah.
supercharger stations now across the
Yeah.
US, so
Yeah.
we've dealt with
Right.
similar concerns and
Yeah.
often are able to find a resolution. If
Yep.
not the case here, we totally understand.
Yeah,
We also study and care a lot about where we put our locations, so we
Sure.
like partnering with Target for obvious reasons. They're a
Yep.
great amenity. Takes about 30 minutes to charge your car when you plug in, so that's the perfect amount of time to grab some groceries, do a little shopping. I also just want to mention that all the existing sites nearby get a lot of usage, and that was one of the reasons we did decide to come and propose this site, is because we have a high degree of confidence that people, both Tesla and non-Tesla drivers, will want to use this station. So the cost to build it will probably be $400,000 to $600,000. It's an expensive proposition. We try to do it right. We would want to be good partners with the village here.
And I think we're all on board with like electric cars and all of that, great, but I think it's just I think everybody's just worried about the location and just the size of the transformers and just it being so prominently in the center. I think that's the problem.
the difference, just because people that come here like Target, we're a very small town. Highland Park, they don't answer to 80 neighbors when they drive down the street. They don't have ownership like our town has of each square foot. So we're very sensitive to all of these developments that's why we're on this board. So maybe I would suggest maybe they look at option, alternative two with Target. If it's a hard no on them, that gives us some information. And in the interim, we do a thing and look at Waukegan. As
I agree with everything that you guys are saying, and just some additional observations on the existing location that they like. If you're in the buildings across the street or in that parking lot, when you come out with that big of a structure there, you're not even gonna be able to see the Target. I just,
Is
I
that a
like
good
all-
or a bad thing?
Yeah.
I
I like alternate number two, and I wonder
Yeah.
if one of the suggestions for them is to go back to Target and say, it looks like the board would approve alternate number two.
Sure.
But I would say before we do that,
Go see the other one?
Please do.
yeah.
Yeah, from where we were just on site, and I promise you, if you're leaving the Epic Burger or whatever the restaurant is, or the Tropical Smoothie Cafe that's right there, and you're looking across, there's our 8-foot tall cabinet will certainly not, you'll be able to see the Target just fine.
Yeah,
The equipment, once you see it next to the Woodman's or next to the casino, we will work with you guys on whatever you recommend, of course. I think seeing it in person, I do think will help. I would highly
Yeah, we'll go,
encourage
we'll
and
go.
ask,
We will- we'll-
possible.
Would you guys be amenable to building some kind of, even if they're only 4 or 5 feet tall, screen walls, and then put planting in front of them, just whether it's, whatever it is, it's on the site, besides, it's something that we could lay out, or you could lay out, just to kind of soften the harshness of this cabinet. You got curb, grass, concrete, boom.
Yeah.
One question I had just kind of throw out to the board, and I think someone already brought it up. With the proposal they have here, if they simply mirrored it so that all the equipment was down on,
Yeah, that's where you running your primaries this way and your secondaries back this way, and there's not enough room to do it? Is that it?
no, that was the easement that may or may not exist.
Are you saying flip the parking, the stalls with the,
Right, in other words, right now we have a landscape island, which is about the size of a parking stall. Then we have, I don't know, it looks like a parking stall or maybe more, then all of the charging stations, then all of their equipment on the island, and then the street that's not a service road. And I'm saying, what if this whole thing was mirrored? In other words, all of the equipment moved more into the center of the.
yeah, they said that that run is too difficult.
Yes, we did investigate that. So essentially swapping the chargers themselves with this landscape island. And what it would create is the routing that's approved with ComEd and the number of bends allowed to get that primary to a transformer that's over here.
Okay,
One, we
all
would
right, that's
exceed,
fine.
but we would also have high voltage primary coming across, and then we'd also be running AC and then DC conduit runs in a very close proximity, which is a concern.
I was under I thought it was the issue of the easement.
Yeah.
So what are we asking them to look at?
I would think that we would, if they could look into alternate two with Target to see if that easement is a valid easement still, would be, I guess, item one. If it's not a valid easement, look at alternate two, and in the interim, we'll look at the equipment, I guess.
And we can also take an action to look at maybe some additional screening options that
great.
may fit here too,
Yep.
that we could present as, will it fit in there? Will it cause a obstruction from a line of sight? And see if there's something that that will help us.
What the easement is.
What kind of clearances do you need around these cabinets?
Right now, we would need a 4-foot clearance on the front to allow for the door swing and then allow for a safe working space. On the back side, we have a little bit more flexibility to tighten up that clearance space on the back and
Where's your
sides.
ventilation?
Top.
Oh.
So as long as we're not enclosing it into a solid building, we shouldn't have any issues with ventilation and cooling.
Okay.
So just to clarify, right now, the board is saying we would like this move to alternate 2, if possible.
I don't know how that would lay out,
Yeah.
because the alternate 2 has got a, funny shaped island.
Well, I think you guys looked at it, didn't you?
We can make that island.
Yeah.
Well, I just meant
Yeah.
is everybody's sort of gut reaction is that would be better?
I say it's better. I don't say it's perfect,
But it's better.
but it's better, which is better.
Just curious.
Yeah.
To what other people are thinking.
Well, and even with the funny shaped island, Bob, they could do the same thing as on this one, just move it over 2 spaces.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They can figure that.
yeah, it's gonna be a little more difficult to lay this stuff out, I think, but it's not
Yeah.
impossible.
I mean, I love alternate 3 location, but that seems too complicated. I feel
think
like
that's too
alternate 2 is a good compromise.
All right. Continued?
Again?
Sorry to do this, guys.
It's okay, yeah. I just asked that you go visit a site.
Yeah,
will.
great.
And
We'll do that,
Yeah,
yeah.
check
so
one
we
out.
appreciate it.
We all
I
will.
was very destroyed, I was just disappointed when I went down and saw those things today. They were so,
Yeah.
so big.
Yeah,
No wonder there's a wall around them.
yeah.
So we should make a motion to continue it to our May meeting date, otherwise we'll,
Okay.
have to publish notices again, which isn't the end of the world, but
So,
that's
So-
May 7th.
We're making a motion to move, or
To continue this.
I make a motion to continue this review of the Tesla charger stations until the next meeting on May 7th.
Right.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
May I ask a clarifying question, just so we can ensure we're
Yep.
doing our homework and aligning to the aesthetic standards that are part of your ordinances and code? Is that like acceptable planting materials or potential equipment enclosure materials? Are those available online, or is that something that we can obtain from?
We don't really have a stock list online of those.
I mean, what you'd have
People
to,
generally look at their context and customize from there. Like if someone was mentioning, materials on the building for screening materials, or use colors or materials from the building, or landscaping from the context of the site too.
with the materials on the building are, we don't really know what they are. I mean, you can try and match the brick. I could call,
Yeah.
what's her name, Heather, and find out. If she remembers, she could probably look it up.
Target may have their own, I guess, right? Would they have their own, like, limitations or standards and stuff? Probably.
Yeah, they would. I would just caution against going down the road of a true CMU enclosure.
For sure, no,
So,
I don't think anybody wants that.
But I
Yeah.
think we could come up with some potential other screening to be considered, and I
I think
just
it could just
wanted
be a
to-
nice fence that maybe you can even lift off in sections for access or something. I mean, I don't want it to be too heavy because we're not gonna hide it.
Do what?
I don't want it to be too heavy because we're not gonna hide the equipment. So it should just be,
Well, I was thinking of the stone that's on the building.
yeah, just
You know, it's a
something,
little stone wall.
yeah,
With
just
a-
something.
With a cap
Yep.
or something like that, or
Yeah.
the brick, or.
Yep,
Is that this?
Yeah, if we tried to mimic a stone, it would most likely result in requiring a CMU block wall with veneer to help blend with the existing Target store. But I think we have some potential options for some screening that we can try and match colors, aesthetics, try to blend it with the surrounding buildings. I just thought I would ask if there was anything published that we could reference so that when we do come back on May 7th, we're as aligned with your expectations as possible, and hopefully third time's a charm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And would you allow this screening only on 3 sides? Or does it have to be on all 4? Or could it be just the front? Or,
I would think you'd want it on the front and the two sides.
That's
and
what I was kinda
Probably not the
looking at
back
here.
side, you know, the side that faces the charging stations. I don't think that needs to be screened. I would think that's probably
The
the,
side that you need access to get to the charging stations, I would think that.
yeah.
And for me, it might matter where it was. I suppose if it was farther over, maybe two, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have
I
to
mean,
see.
if it was right in the middle,
Yeah.
maybe three, I don't
Or just these?
you know what I mean?
Matt.
Like, yeah, it's hard to say.
If it's maybe broken.
Yep,
Right.
yep, just little,
Size of this island in
Yeah.
the latest proposal.
We cannot.
They have
Right,
these things
that's why I'm
standing on the island.
So what is?
I think those are,
I think those are like pylons there. And then these are the big charge, the generators, I guess, and that's the big 8-foot guy.
So if you're coming on a road like this, you're gonna see.
You're seeing
it
it.
should be all, I think it should be.
It should all be, yeah, if you can, right, yeah. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to look at
These
that.
are lower, right?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So that's the
It's a small
beast.
town.
Yeah.
People will,
I just kinda have to play around.
I like it, yeah.
like they will.
Yeah.
It's just,
I just,
yeah.
I can't imagine just
Yeah, we'll try.
approving it.
Do we show them
our best.
the sketch?
Sure.
Here, you should take a look
Another
at
question,
Bob's sketch
If it's not May
there.
7th, what is the next meeting?
It's just an
It's the
idea.
first Tuesday of each month.
Each month? Okay. Because I'm thinking,
Piece of equipment, they don't allow screening,
Similar to a gas station.
so we can screen.
Yeah,
we
what
can
they
do-
showed on
These are the larger cabinets, sorry.
Okay.
So these are the Tesla.
some really tall lights, and I'm not sure if they're identical to the ones that are already in the
Small
target.
piece of equipment, the green box.
Yeah.
And ComEd does not allow any screening, landscape, enclosure,
Yeah,
otherwise.
they light
The
up
most important thing is they have to have full access.
Really?
For safety reasons, yes. But we can screen our equipment, so these four cabinets on here, we could have screening.
So they wouldn't let us put a little wall out here?
If we get far enough away,
Yeah.
maybe outside of the.
It's just where that hatch mark is.
There's two trees here, so I'd be able to.
Oh, bro.
And we can't get too far out because you gotta have visibility for the intersection too on the line.
Look,
We can do
if
site studies.
if you look at the back of the building, the target building,
Yeah,
the big
I just
green
wanna make sure you know what
transformer sticking
the
out
post
like
will
a
look like.
sore thumb.
yeah.
Yeah, because unfortunately, they sometimes need emergency maintenance.
So when you guys go look at a
Yeah.
site,
And I can't remember what the other.
Anyway, that's the idea.
Yeah, I think we understand that.
Maybe-
It was similar, that
I thought it was in here, go ahead.
and they wanted it.
Take this that way.
Okay.
There it is. So this is what the new
I know the project.
Yeah,
So the existing posts, when you go out to
Was Highland
Waukegan
Park
or anywhere
easy?
else you go,
We did.
but the equipment will look the same.
ABR, we did one or two public hearings for that project.
Didn't you used to sit on Highland Park's ABR?
Yeah.
Neil and I were on it.
Not when that was.
Oh, no, of course not.
Yeah, so on this packet, this was the existing.
Been here for-
right here.
How long have you been on this?
This is what you used to see.
I was on
So
that
now
commission for
we
20
have
years, and I've been
upgraded
here
the
for 20
post, and now they're gonna look like
More like
I've been doing this for 45.
You've seen it all. You've seen it all. Electric cars, who would have thought?
Yeah, we had wind-up cars.
Hitching posts.
All right, are we done?
Oh,
You guys done? You need anything else from us?
I think we're good.
so they're
Probably
gonna
not.
send, are you gonna send some options to Mike of what you've done before for screenings? Is it,
some visuals that we can provide from
Just-
existing sites
okay.
to help give an idea, see if you guys
Yeah.
could provide a little feedback, if that would be an acceptable look and feel. That way, whatever we do come back to
Yeah.
propose, hopefully it aligns with expectations.
Okay,
All right, perfect.
so we're on
Thank you.
continuation.
thank you very much.
Yep, we continue that,
Thanks.
so we could make a motion.
Make
to
a
adjourn.
motion to go.
I make a motion to leave. Yeah,
Wow,
Well,
longer than I thought it was gonna go.
Okay, so we're adjourned then, right, Bob?
adjourned.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Yay.